3, 2. Hello, and welcome to Spotlight, the official podcast of Grapple. I'm Benno.
I'm JP.
And I'm Matty.
And we're here again for week 2 of Dealer's Choice Month. We've just been chatting in the pre-show about Quasar eating orange peel in cinemas, the IWC of cinemas, amongst other things. Scran of the week, all of that good stuff. But yeah, we're here for the proper stuff. Here for the wrestling, which, as we talked about in the pre-show, not been able to escape all weekend as far as homework goes and all the various things going on. Dealer's Choice Month is a grind, Matty. I can feel you're feeling it already at this point. This full-time podcasting plus full-time office / work where you're not too much, isn't it?
Oh, mate, it's like I say to JP earlier on off camera. I think it was. It's like Sunday nights, mate. Even when we don't record, they're hard enough getting to sleep. But once you record and you finish and you're buzzing, game over. Yeah. Just you're shattered on a Monday. That's just standard.
Hardened veterans for it now, aren't we, JP? You know.
We are.
Not a night we're podcasting. What are we doing?
Exactly. Did fucking 2 yesterday, mate. Honestly, and I'm in it with. But it's half term. I can get away with this stuff really. This week it's nice. I was basically like a de facto childminder today, so it's like a very kind of different. It was a lot more relaxed, and I like doing it from the front room as well. You just got to keep your eyes peeled.
What did Charlie think of the 100-minute New Japan main event today? Did he enjoy it? Did he have a good time watching it? Or
you'd be horrified. I mean, as I'll get into later on, I watched Bryan Danielson versus Zack Sabre Jr. sat in the passenger seat of a car with him on my lap. And do you know what? He sat there and watched the entire fucking 40 minutes, like from the pre-show package all the way through as well. That lad is force-fed a diet of wrestling. If I'm not raising some Tiger Woods of wrestling, what the fuck am I doing? Like at this stage, like this has to somehow pay off. Like you just sort of go, yeah, this is what you need to do. But it feels a bit risky to have him sort of practicing, I don't know, fucking moonsaults off the sofa on the floor or something. But
JP's crash. We need to start it as a business, mate. We get wrestling in the background. It'll harden you for later life. You know what I mean? Make them aware of the realities of things. You know, you might.
DBS checked through the fucking roof in case anyone's curious on that. So.
I probably shouldn't say that of all people. But yeah, obviously, for anyone who's read the description knows we'll have the great Karen Peterson joining us a little bit later to talk all about that. Matty's on to have a bit of a chat in a bit. We've of course got to talk about the big news. And obviously, Rock coming back from Hollywood, and leaning into the heel side of things, recognizing that the crowd weren't going with him, and going with that new character, putting over some young wrestlers on the way, throwing a bit of charity to some big carders like Seth Rollins. But enough about March 2003. We will be talking about that stuff later. But that's basically the vortex we're in now, Matty. It's all Dwayne, it's all go, and yeah, this way. I'm going to reveal I am the next choice on Dealer's Choice. If anybody missed it, I as we spun the wheel when we had Gareth on and made the deal at the end of that Dealer's Choice episode for Hollywood Rock. But you guys don't know what my choice is yet. I'll be telling you in a little bit, but it'll be hard to top yours, Matty. Couldn't be more timely. Right off on the heels of the Brock Lesnar shows we talked about, and also right in the middle of all of this. It was literally a snapshot of what could be with our Dwayne.
Mate, the last 4 or 5 nights, I've literally not escaped the man. And I owe him an apology after kicking off on him last week, which we're going to in a bit. I owe him a big apology. But boys, I've not escaped him for the last 4 days. I've just got every version of his theme. Just it's there in my brain, JP, when I go to sleep. Just the visions of the man as I open my eyes. It's been a wild 4 days, all about Dwayne. Mate.
Well, Garrett's not here, and Garrett was the more negative of the lot of us, I think, on Dwayne. I will say, I'd forgotten it was only 3 months, that period, or kind of 4 months. It's 3 to 4 months, and I think it is kind of our own fault. We do decide to sit and watch 15 promos in a row from the same period, but I think that wore on Gareth a little bit. So I don't think he's going to be as up for this rerun of Hollywood Rock if we get it in 2024. Me and Matty, on the other hand, I'd say we were tapping into our childhood. We were both 18 at this point, 19, 20. At this point,
generational divide, though, better money.
Yeah, it was very much that me and Matty were very much loving it and loving the nostalgia and loving the hurricane and stuff like that. I think Gareth was maybe pretty more the negative end, and I think JP, you were representing. I feel like the message boards at the time that might not have loved it as much as young me and Matty. But I think we got you on some of it. I think there were definitely bits of it that were filled in for you. I think gap wise and that you did get something out of.
Definitely. I mean, but people will get my extensive thoughts on the hurricane, like primarily, and how I felt about it at that point in time. But
Justice
happy days.
Big three fans here.
Loved recording it. It was like it's a cracking show. So obviously, if you haven't heard that, go across the patreon.com/grapple, where we've got obviously loads of other stuff just to get all the other sort of like. We've got the weekend show this weekend. Obviously, you're going to be doing Dealer's Choice in a moment. That's where all of us get to pick a show, and the news updates as well. So place to go, youtube.com as well /@grapple.
Cracking time was that looking into to all things Dwayne, and we will continue to do that this month. But in the meantime, we can talk my one. Matty, any guesses on what I'm going to go with for my Dealer's Choice?
Well, I don't know if you've thrown me a red herring before on the pre-show, trying to put me off scent, but I've got Samoa Joe's going to be involved in this. Whether it's heavily, whether it's just some sort of matches, that's my thing. Samoa Joe's going to be involved. 100%.
How about you, JP? Any thoughts?
We haven't been to Ring of Honor for a while, although then that would go contradictory to what the running time would be. Like as well, normally those Ring of Honor lads like to take their time with a few things, don't they? So I'm figuring the only thing I've got is kind of time frame, and I'm thinking with this Hollywood Rock show, we're not going to be too many years away from that. I've got a feeling it'll be mid 2000s at the very least.
If you didn't try and throw me off scent, Benno, I reckon it might be a companion piece to Sean last time. It might be later, Sean, because you did say it was some of the worst matches and some of the best matches. So maybe that. Maybe two guesses anyway.
A few shouts in the chat for hoops as well.
Hoops.
I'll put you out of your misery. You know, obviously we have the different shows here on Grapple, and I wanted to. We did. Yours was a deep cut. I think I gave the game away on the weekend show last Friday when I slipped up and started to say the word mix, which could only be taped. Can't think of any other words that I could have corrected that with, unfortunately. So I gave that away, and it was going to be that, which for me, deep cut is more, extensive as far as like story and, like we said, promo and background, and, we end up spending hours on it. Mixtape for me, selection of matches. And if I'm going to go with matches, I think there's only one place I can go with mine. I go through like my history as a wrestling fan. And what I've done to you on these Dealer's Choices, I've gone in the past with some, obviously some ROH has always made its way through. CM Punk, of course, being my favorite, I would say, current wrestler, managed to cover him. Went a bit back in time, didn't we? And we did the, like you say, the Sean show, which was probably my previous favorite wrestler to CM Punk. So it was fun, kind of going down that. And it, like you said, Matty, reignited my love. In Shawn Michaels, so that was fun. I thought I should go back even further. Who was my favourite wrestler before Shawn Michaels? And when I think about my favourite wrestlers, and I think about shows that we could do where we could, like I said, do some of the best matches of all time, do some of the worst matches of all time. You have to look at the big match performers in wrestling history, lads. And I think when it comes to big match performers, there is no better than my friend and yours, and JP's gonna love this. And I'm calling this mixtape, the mixtape. We're either calling it Jim, or we're calling it Big Match Jim. As we're going all the way back to my favourite wrestler from the 80s and early 90s, as JP buries his head in his hands. So Jim, the Ultimate Warrior mixtape.
This is brilliant. This is fucking brilliant.
And I mean, everything I said, love it. We're going to get some of the best matches of all time, JP. Couple of WrestleMania classics in there. Couple of I mean, really, he's missed the SummerSlam, is he not? Our Jim. We'll get into that as well. And yeah, it's going to be going through. It's a relatively slight selection because it is a mixtape rather than a deep cut. I'm not using that to have a go at the man. But I have decided on this podcast, because I'm going to test the theory that despite him being Jim, despite him being the Ultimate Warrior, when it came to the big matches, I think there's few who delivered as well as Jim Hellwig in his day.
This is wild, JP. This is bananas. This
big matches in his history.
I kind of love
Jim of
this.
Jim of Honor. Yeah, and it's all sickos. Yeah, there's no much was still supplementary. It's just full sickos.
There isn't.
Well, I'm glad you're not putting the promos in there, Benno. I'm glad it is a mixtape.
So it's the big matches. So it's mainly that. JP, are you up for it? I was worried about you with this one. I think you're gonna hate this, and I can't wait. We did say dealer's choice. Everyone's got to do it. You know,
everyone's got to do it.
That's the best.
I am though weirdly looking forward to it, if only because I've noticed that there we have, like, in terms of the people on it, we've got 2 Rick Rude matches, of which I've got strong thoughts on both of those, and like almost wanting to, say there were miscarriages of justice. Looking at you, Rowdy Roddy Piper, and your ass, like, because fucking Rick was on the way to winning that. I'm fascinated by this. I won't lie. I'm expecting, like, the bits of shitting on it. I kind of expect to gonna do that as well. But it'll be a fucking laugh. Like, I'm under no illusion it is gonna be. So, like, as much as I'm prepared, I know I'm gonna hate like aspects of this as well. It has to be done. Yeah, it has to be done. Like, that's I think it's a cracking fucking choice. Whether or not I say that at the end when I'm watching,
Well, just think of your week this week, JP. You're going to spend a night a week this week, or in the time of us recording, just watching a great match from wrestling history involving our boy Jim. So just to give it a quick rundown, start with a Honky Tonk Man squash match, which is like it's a nice little supplement. You want to start to introduce us to Jim. We got Rick Rude, SummerSlam 89, Hulk Hogan, WrestleMania 6, Rick Rude again, as you said, SummerSlam 90. There's a little Ted DiBiase hidden gem in there I've stuck in as a good example of a Warrior TV match. Couple of Randy matches, of course, to kind of to end us out with WrestleMania 7 and SummerSlam 92, and then into Triple H in Mania 12, which is of course the place you've got to end any Jim mixtape. But what I'm looking forward to chatting some of the supplementary stuff I've put on there as well. Optional, I will say to everyone, but there's a few along the way. I'm going to kind of introduce these. I definitely want to talk about his match with Bobby Heenan from
the Weasel suit match.
That's the Weasel suit match.
There's a few of them knocking about. Yeah.
I included as bonus material just for you, JP, when you got an extra 10 minutes, a match with Ted DiBiase from the Tokyo Dome, just because I thought that'd be funny. So you can throw that in there just to compare and contrast. And just for the Bretro boys in the bonus material, Matty, a tag team match with Bret Hart against Pavlichenko and Kamala. I've thrown in there purely bonus, purely extra stuff. Obviously,
fuck me, Bret had his work cut out that day, didn't he? Jesus Christ! I've got to carry everyone, probably the fucking ref as well.
That is brilliant, Ben. I'll try to give you that one, mate. That's a great choice.
Brilliant. As soon as Steph had said there in the chat, she goes just lol at some of the suggestions, like, oh, we're completely off kilter, aren't we, with this? And I don't know how far away you can go from Ring of Honor than a Jim mixtape. Like, it feels like it's 180 degrees. Like, I very much doubt he was like watching Ring of Honor on the Sly from Home, old Jim Warrior. They certainly would have known where to send it through, wouldn't they? Send it to a bloke called Warrior with this fucking surname. Like,
no, but
if anyone's got any other hidden gems from them, I'm not opposed to throwing some little bonus ones at the end. But I've been combing the forums. It was harder than you think to find good gym matches. I got to be honest. But I think the ones I've got, I think they're gonna.
I don't approve.
This is Steph. Yeah, she tried to talk me out of it. But we're there. So there you go, Jim. Coming up this weekend, dealer's choice. Everybody. Look forward to. I think me and Matty will have a better time than JP and.
Don't like this these days, Benno. What's going on?
we're getting on too much, aren't we? We might be setting ourselves up for failure here, because who knows what these two might throw at us after this. But there we go. Not a lot of homework, lads. So it's not too bad. You'll be all good. But yeah, we'll be recording that this week. But on that note, speaking of arguing, Matty, you're joining us for the opening of the show to kind of pick up on some of the threads that we talked about last week, and I didn't think it wasn't right to not follow up that great conversation we had all last week about WrestleMania and everything going on, and not much has happened in the last week, Matt, as far as WWE and their WrestleMania build as we get into it. I can just imagine your face on Thursday night. Did you watch the WrestleMania what was not a press conference kickoff show to a show that isn't happening for 2 months live from Vegas live on Thursday night? I'm guessing you didn't from your face
Mate,
there. You were,
no.
we talked about it a little bit obviously on the weekend show, but yeah, I'm guessing you watched it on Friday morning based on the replies I got in the various group chats me and you were both in.
Mate, I got up before work a bit early because I thought I'll just watch the main bit, and it was just perfect on YouTube, the whole 22 minutes. And I was like, you haven't been like that probably since last year with like the Bloodline stuff, the Civil War. I was buzzing. I was bouncing around the living room. I was like trying to get Steph in, JP, from the bedroom, and she just weren't asked. I was like, but look, the Rock's turned heel. He's turned heel. He slapped Cody. It's kicked off. And as you say, like, they done as good as they could with it. And I listened to you guys on the weekend show, and Benno, you were just like, you were loving it, but you were describing it perfect. Like, it was chaos. What actually was it? But who's asked? It made sense to us, and it just has gone in a way now where who knows? You know, we're obviously going to get Roman and Cody, but are we going to get a tag match? What's The Rock going to do? It's more positive than it was last week anyway, because I was absolutely I was buzzing.
Apologise to Dwayne. Is that the title?
Oh, mate, I owe him so much of an apology, because as you said last week, though, you especially put it in great words of like, has he got it in him now to like read the room, to read what's going on? And to be fair to him, Ben, he fucking did, didn't he? Yeah, you know, more than we ever thought he would. So yeah, he deserves an apology.
I said it on the weekend show. Like, for me, like, that was it. It was. I don't get me wrong. I understand the criticisms, like, and I agree with most of the criticisms about it. They shouldn't have been there. It made Seth Rollins look like a fucking geek. It made, and you might not agree with this one, Matty, but we can get into it. I felt like Roman was like the beta to Rock's alpha, a little bit in there. I think that might be a negative they'll need to sort out. There were a bit to the staging I didn't even love, as far as, you know, Cody coming out with no music and, you know, all of that side of things. There are absolutely holes to pick in it. You know, as far as the fact that they were even there in the first place, that this needed to be done. But as far as calling audibles, like I said on Weekend Show, I couldn't fault it really. I think for the situation they're in, it's far better of a scenario than just carrying on. And it's a far better, and it shows, like you said, that like based on watching the Hollywood Rock stuff over the weekend, based on his reaction to this, I probably shouldn't have doubted Dwayne. He clearly has listened, and obviously the appearance earlier on Pat McAfee's show on Thursday probably give it away as well, that he was going to be very much leaning into that. We got some a couple of updated news items on what the exact plan is going forward. But I was live in the moment. It was one where I was watching it thinking, people who get up in the morning and know what's happened, they're probably going to go, what the fuck was that? Yeah. But I think watching it live for me was actually one of the first times watching a WWE product in a long time where I've genuinely thought, for good and bad, I don't know what the fuck's happening here. I don't want to get what's going to happen next. Don't know who's going to say what. I genuinely don't know what the media match is, and I am, for lack of like my normal investment in the WWE product, like kind of on the edge of my seat, wanting to know like which way they're going to go. And like, again, they still need to stick the landing, and they shouldn't have been there. And, you know, there's still a few different ways this could go afterwards. But as far as pulling something out of a pretty desperate situation, I think Rock did read the room. And I think, you know, Triple H read the room. And I think they figured something out that's at least more compelling than where we were headed.
I think the only thing, though, that people will go back to mainly is that line Cody said in that promo of, but not at WrestleMania. If he wouldn't have said that, then it wouldn't be as jumbled up as it was.
That's what shows you it wasn't a full plan right the way through. There's clearly been like backstage to and fro, and like you look at that Triple H promo on SmackDown, like I didn't get round to watching SmackDown until today, and that just for me was just the most obvious, like, dick swinging, like, I'm still in charge, you know, let's just break fucking Nick Aldis, who, by the way, like, who had that on the bingo card, Nick Aldis standing in the background while The Rock was going back and forth with Cody Rhodes to build WrestleMania, you know, flashbacks to the original All In there, isn't there? But, like, you know, he's supposed to be the authority figure. Triple H is just, like, you know, making sure everybody knows. I do think in elements of this, we're getting like a bit of a boardroom drama, like playing up on screen, even up to, including, as we said on Friday, JP, you know, Triple H going immediately onto Twitter to clarify that Cody and Roman was the match, when even like the talking heads there didn't seem to be fully aware of that. So it is a mess, and it is kind of, still like settling things down. But I think overall we came out pretty positive, didn't we, JP?
We did. The course correct was quick. I think that's the thing with this. It doesn't feel like it. They kind of dragged it out. It was like they'd recognise, now we've kind of like ballsed up, really. Even if Seth Rollins is like a spare prick at a wedding, really, isn't he? He's just sort of like he's the one, but you just sort of think, yeah, he's there where CM Punk could have been if this had been any kind of a plan, which it wasn't. Like you mentioned as well, like this really wasn't. There's no way that they would have wanted to create this sort of state of confusion and end up in this situation. It's like they've also tried to use WrestleMania 1 was headlined with a tag match kind of like deal as well to be part of it. At the same time, obviously they've released the ad that wasn't one of the Super Bowl ads, but it was on the same day when basically everyone seems to be releasing trailers for various things, and they had that out there as well, and it very much sort of hinted at the tag match was completely set up. Why? Because they're fucking staring each other down, and I was just like, oh, okay. It does say a lot that, I mean, what would have been in place, it's the idea of getting like Roman Reigns working 2 nights in a row, which feels like kind of wild. So I think like this is going to be like that second night is going to have to be kind of like ridiculously packed, isn't it? As because you're going to have the Seth Rollins match probably against whoever wins the Elimination Chamber as well. So it's, I think in the main they've managed to save it, but it's very, very chaotic. And I think it's just The Rock seems to have taken time to go to his character, which makes the deep cut that you chose, Matty, like the Hollywood Rock, just the most timely show ever, because what we saw was the next kind of iteration of, I don't know, I say Hollywood Rock, whether it's kind of meant to be like Tech Bro Rock as much as anything, isn't it? That's because delivering fucking TED Talks in front of a Bloodline Mahjong board.
You must have been loving that image you got up on the screen for video viewers right now, Matty, like rocking the U2 man power trip, Rock and Roman.
But this is it, Ben. Like, I still want to see Rock Roman based on what the Rock built the match up, about the history, about the bloodline. But then that was the only thing. It's dead for now. It's dead for now, but I think it'll play in to the tag match. Obviously, they'll cost each other, or Roman will realise like he's never had to answer to no one, and now he's got to answer to someone, or he thinks he doesn't. They'll end up falling out, and then that'll play into the finish of The Rock getting rid of like Solo the next night, and Cody. Got my head around Cody's actually going to win this year, Benno. So we won't have that discussion again. But as you say, there, the thing I didn't expect at all is this new 2-man power trip. But at the same time, I don't want this to end. I hope this goes on for months, them just beating everyone up, them just taking over. I fucking love that more than anything. But I did love as well. Like the slap to Cody was great. But just that little backstage after, because I was still buzzing. Punk was loving it. It cut to Punk, he was sticking his oar in, getting his shout out. And then when it cut back to Triple H, and then Rock and Roman together just power walking down the thing, and Rock's like swearing his head off. Like, fix this bullshit. I'll slap the fucking teeth out of his mouth. I fucking loved all that. I just thought it was so chaotic. Just, I'm strapped in. I'm ready to go. I'm just buzzing.
Do you not think there's the issues coming out? Like I say, as much as I enjoyed it, a lot of the issues coming out of it are, you mentioned that slap from Rock to Cody. That makes me more into Rock and Cody as a match.
It's options, though, isn't it?
There's a tag match and then a singles match, but who knows? Clearly, somebody that wasn't impossible. I guess that conversation of Roman, will you work 2 nights? Was a thing that I suppose maybe it was Dwayne that took had to be the one to have that conversation with him to make sure that happened, because it does feel like that's happening now. But you're not concerned a little bit at Roman has been literally the most pushed, biggest star in WWE. Rock's casting a massive shadow there, and there were definitely times it felt like, especially like that little interaction with Triple H where it's all about Rock and Roman's kind of walking alongside him. Do you not think they're gonna have to walk that road quite carefully? Like, in theory, the 2 big bads are now together, and like I say, it's a solution to a problem that they shouldn't have been in. We should have been. Roman versus Rock was a layup, and we should have been excited about it. Turned out, they managed to somehow fuck that up, but I'm sure they're gonna reverse engineer our way back there. But in the meantime, as an alliance, how would you tell that story and
But I
keep
think what
Roman
I've just
as,
said there,
as
Ben,
what Roman is?
Rock might lead the way and like think he's running, and then Roman will realise, and I think that's how they'll in the storyline will split up. I don't know totally how they're going to do, but I think, do you get what I'm saying, JP? I think Roman will realise that, and he's thinking, wait there, I'm the man who's meant to be calling the shots, or maybe in the tag match, Rock's leading the way in the tag match, and that causes friction at the end. Something will happen, of course.
It makes you wonder with this sort of TKO deal that the Rock has, whether or not, okay, there's sort of two birds, one stone situation whereby he's got a financial kind of interest in wanting TKO to be successful. And he probably thinks is it him doing a few big matches in like some big stadiums, like along the way, a way of kind of delivering on that? So are we going to get this as kind of like, and not him on TV on even as much as when he was Hollywood Rock, really, could be even sort of less than that, but him turning up and doing some kind of big matches in the build up to, and this has to be the key to it, is you do Roman Rock for next year. That's what you do for WrestleMania 41. Like you really should be doing your absolute utmost to save it. But are there matches they're going to do along the way? A Cody Rock for SummerSlam for me seems feasible. And given what the TKO strategy is of running these, and you can see them doing it in 2024 in particular, perhaps towards the end, of having big UFC show and big WWE shows on the same weekend. If you've got Dwayne Johnson with an interest in TKO, and obviously there's like $30 million, whether or not, I can't imagine there wouldn't be some degree of like shares for him, because why would he be getting involved? And he'll realize actually that this is where the real value lies in him, is him being able to kind of almost have this kind of like run. And I would go to a retirement match next year. I think that would be like, you kind of, if that is the direction that they would go in. It's egos, it's injuries as well.
Injuries
like we mentioned, this is going to be a kind of, it makes me think that tag match is going to be all bells and whistles anyway.
It's Seth's injury as well, isn't it? You've got to cover him up.
There's three of them, really, isn't there? I mean, like I will always worry about Roman's kind of physical health, because he feels like someone who's, he's had to cut down on the physical schedule because of his own kind of health issues throughout over the years, as much as anything. So it's really how much of them are we going to be getting? Because I mean, rather than chucking him into like the big match as a singles, which was just so fraught with danger and daft in so many ways, to do it like this, it does feel, and as much as I don't like them doing it, they've kind of got themselves slightly out of jail. But if they actually then go to sensible long-term booking afterwards, they can get some real value out of this as a program, and kind of have them as a two-man pack. But then, he fails to beat Cody. That's where you start laying the seeds. And
they're on SmackDown, aren't they, next week as well? Both of them. Heyman said that they're both going to be.
Yeah, they're both going to be on Raw tonight, aren't they?
Yeah, it's like, big SmackDown next week. Like, that is huge. Something big will happen.
Yeah, and my guess is, they build it up, and then Rock won't be able to resist making the you'll make the big save for Cody at the end of Mania Night 2 or something like that.
Get his
getting
he's the hero then at the end.
Yeah, mid-card Jimmy and Solo, like shoes them out.
Few rock bottoms.
And, and obviously you could have a little moment for Jacob Fatu and the rest of the lads there, the grandchildren of Gary Albright. There's all kinds of people you could bring out based on that family tree, isn't there? They'll do something like that. But I've got to commend them more than anything, that they've seen the writing on the wall. They know this is not the way to go to Roman versus Rock, and the only question is where that happens now. Like, obviously, it's not going to be the Elimination Chamber, because that pay-per-view's kind of been forgotten now. Although there is an Elimination Chamber match now for the men's side of things. But as far as where it happens now, probably Saudi, maybe SummerSlam, maybe even Mania next year. Like Gareth made the excellent shout at the very end of the Rock show yesterday when we talked about it. Like, you got to realize Rock, and this is literally we counted them out, didn't we, Matt? 6 matches he's worked in the last 20 years. Like that's a very long time to only work 6 matches. Like it's one of them includes a tag match against the Miz and R-Truth that I barely even count. But like that tells you, doesn't it? Like, you know, as much as it feels like he didn't work that long ago, those last matches again were almost
a decade.
In fact, 10 years ago, weren't they? They were a decade ago. So like. Yeah, I think it's better for him to do the tag, and it's just a matter of let's see if your body holds up there first, way, mate. And then we'll come back next year, or we'll come back, next time you got a break in your shooting schedule. But again, it's a positive that he's realised that, I think.
And just to don't want to really sort of harp on about it, but that idea of we're so used to them never listening, like almost through like gritted teeth, any decisions having to be kind of changed. And it feels here they've done a course correction at least very, very quickly, which has then changed the discourse kind of entirely. Let's be honest, because that's what it did. It did to us. We were very downbeat last week talking about it. Now look at us. It's like, oh no, okay, they've kind of saved it just because there was the recognition of like, this has not gone the way that we should have gone. They haven't thought it through properly, and then they've managed to kind of save the situation as probably and placate the egos behind all of this as well, to do that all at the same time. So yeah,
but that's why I was buzzing, JP, because it was the last thing I expected after us coming off last week, and we're all like, rumours that The Rock's politicking to get the belt. The last thing I expected was him to turn heel and actually join up with Roman. So it's made it exciting, for me anyway. And as Benno said, who knows what's next? Does it make total sense? Obviously there's flaws in it, but the excitement carries it through for me on this road. Like, so yeah, let's just see what happens next. Like,
definitely. Well, we can't talk about that without talking about, I suppose, the other elephant in the room when it comes to WWE stuff. We talked on the weekend show, obviously at length, didn't we, JP, about the allegations against Vince McMahon, which should absolutely not get lost in the ether of all of this stuff, specifically with relation to Ashley Mazzaro and everything that came out in the unearthed statements from her legal team about Vince sexually playing on wrestlers backstage, all kinds of stories, and the obvious horror story of what happened to her in the military base in Kuwait, and all of the things that were contained in there, specifically the stuff with Vince allegedly making out with female wrestlers backstage, down to allegations that he'd been pursuing poor Ashley Mazzaro and had retaliated against her over time. A couple of people unearthed on Twitter some promos that she'd cut on WWE TV, and some segments that she'd recorded with Vince McMahon that according to Ashley Mazzaro and like I say legal representatives were very much personally written by Vince McMahon and personally delivered to her as lines as some kind of I don't know, warped revenge, I suppose was the thing there. So yeah, obviously that's a massive element of the story that we did cover in some detail on the weekend show, but definitely deserves shouting out there as far as a newsworthy note. Slight update today, we do know that Vince McMahon's Mr. McMahon profile has been removed from WWE.com, as in the face of the build to WrestleMania, there very much clearly is a push to just scrub Vince's name from literally everything, including Brock Lesnar being gone.
Gonna say that from the signature at the start. Yeah.
It's, who did they put in his place? LA
Knight.
Yeah. Even in like as much as like there was positive things to talk about that thing from Vegas on Thursday, as weird as it all was. They were literally, Triple H is going through the history of WWE and being very careful, not to mention the McMahon family. I think that's going to be the way forward, isn't it, going forward, JP? But, obviously we should not be allowed to forget the obvious headlines that are still out there, and these little bits of news stories that we're continuing to see come through from, very good and very credible reporting.
Yeah, I mean, the idea of Vince McMahon not being on WWE.com is incredible when you think about it. Like, just to be in that kind of position, and it shows you how kind of scorched earth his name is. And you've got to imagine, obviously, they've got an insight to other things that are possibly going to be coming out. So it just feels like this is an all-out TKO trying to head off everything which obviously they had the Hollywood Reporter article come out that we spoke about as well, in depth about that. But the Ashley Massaro, the statement that was released, which about the idea of him, preying on the multiple female wrestlers as well. So, as we say every time when we talk about this as a story, this is not something that's going away. And more and more people, certainly from within wrestling, are coming out and talking about it, because I know one of the things is interesting. Obviously, we spoke about Bret Hart's response on here. And I mean, you've got the article up on screen for video viewers as well. Just that, how disgusted he was. The fact that he apologized to Rita Chatterton and he saw himself as being someone who, was just sort of himself kind of admitting that he didn't listen to the kind of allegations, first of all, but has come out and is absolutely spot on what he said, in terms of the quote. I always had a respect for him. Now it's tainted. I'm embarrassed that I thought so highly of him. And I think we're going to hear more and more stuff like that. Like we heard even with like Seth Rollins when he gave his speech. But somebody who hasn't spoken about it at all, obviously, Bruce Pritchard, who won't talk about it, who is brought up, I know, on the fact that Dave Meltzer had, and it was like a follow-up to something that Ronda Rousey had said about him being his avatar in the room when it comes to creative. Dave Meltzer kind of following up, going, yeah, he has been giving suggestions, and he will have been the conduit of which he would have done that. And he would have been, all of his ideas for creative would have been coming through Bruce Pritchard as well. But suddenly he can't talk about it, which is the completely unsurprising response to it. He never was going to, but it's, it is something where you think in terms of his involvement, how recently this has been the case. It would have been up till, to all the Janelle Grant, that when that story broke. So, he's still been around the place. And I think that's something that they're not going to be able to kind of bullshit their way out of it. And particularly when it gets through, if the grand jury decide that there is a case for them to prosecute, at that point, I think you're into all manner of dangerous territory. So there's always going to be stuff coming out about this week after week. This is not a story that is going away.
Yeah, that's it. And obviously, Bruce Pritchard's going to, of course, I'm surprised he even said what he said, to be honest. And again, you've got, Conrad Thompson on Twitter trying to defend Bruce, go, no, it's disgusting to bring Bruce's name up here. Ronda Rousey was wrong to do that. All Bruce did was deliver Vince's ideas. And it's like, this bloke was out of the company for, these very serious allegations, even if he didn't know the details. And of course, Bruce Pritchard is still doing his bidding for him, because there was a million yes men like that, in WWE, until eventually the head seems to have been cut off and it's actually stopped. But it just shows you it was always a sham. He was never gone. He was always around, and that was always the rumor. And if anything, that just for me, that little story just proved that Ronda Rousey was 100% right in what she said. And I don't think there is any moral high ground to say, oh well, he was only doing it on business matters. He shouldn't have even been doing that. So yeah, there's been definitely a mix of different reactions through the week on it. But yeah, it's something that obviously I definitely want to give constant spotlight to, and obviously as more news comes through on it, Matt, we'll make sure it's covered at all. But yeah, it doesn't get any better than any of this, does it?
No, definitely not. And as JP says there, it's just not going away, and until we get what happens at the end of this, JP, it is, and rightfully so.
It was a thing that we wondered at the very beginning of all of this, that I've become more and more convinced on as stories get released, the idea that they're going to be completely cleaning shop of people. And it says outright in some of the reporting on this, getting rid of some of the Vince McMahon guys.
Yeah.
And it's good.
Got to happen, JP.
Because this is, I know, obviously Vince is the head of the snake and everything else. And to some form of justice coming for his victims, resulting in a prosecution of him, is thoroughly deserved. But we're also talking about enormous cultural issues, systemic issues within the company that have been amongst management in that company for decades. And who's been there over all of this time? Bob, very short periods where he'd be on the outs. Someone like a Bruce Pritchard as well. So that's why this like, I wasn't surprised he didn't say anything, not even like kind of denials, because I just thought he doesn't want to put himself into kind of legal hot water about this, because it's very hard not to think he doesn't know where all of the bad shit and all of the behavior, it's just not credible given his closeness to Vince over the years.
Definitely. Well, yeah, we'll keep everybody updated on that stuff as it goes on. But yeah, before we let you go, Matty, we're going to get into Batters AEW, and then we're going to have Karen joining us to talk some New Japan. Anything else from you? I don't know. We should lighten the mood a little bit, I suppose. Talk we talked on the pre-show about the Super Bowl. Is that Steve Austin behind you?
Yeah. Did you see this ad?
I've seen the pictures, JP, but I've seen Steve with a wig like that years ago on another ad. But what's this ad for?
So it's about Kawasaki. It's basically for like off-road vehicles, and the idea is as soon as you sit in it, because it's basically, what is it? Is it a business at the front, party at the back? So that's like what they're doing, the shape of it. So the idea is you sit in it and a mullet instantly grows, and anything you drive past grows a mullet, like an eagle and a bear and Stone Cold Steve Austin, who's out there in the woods. So they'd managed to do this. And as you know, Benno, we spoke about this on the pre-show as well. Super Bowl Tommy, like the trailer stuff is fucking great. And so yeah, he was on there. I think John Cena was also in there as well at the same time.
That when he was dressed in a baseball attire, JP. I've seen that video with Cena. That was weird. Have you seen that the past couple of days?
Was that I don't know who those banana people are. It just doesn't make any like kind of sense to me on that, what all that was about. But he was advertising T-Mobile, which says a lot about his kind of like, you know,
something else
that he's fronting it up on there. I think the most surprising person to appear in there was Jade Cargill, doing a quite frankly decent frog splash. I'm assuming she's been training like fucking the PC, because I could never see her doing that in AEW for a while. To somebody talking about Mountain Dew, like, and she appeared in that advert as well. So like, which is bigger than anything she did in AEW, and she's only had one match in WWE, and that was the Royal Rumble. And I don't know if she's appeared since then, but yeah, here you go. There he is. For video views, you can see it on here. Whatever it passes by, it ends up growing a mullet as well. Fair play, Kawasaki. But I don't understand why mullets have come back into fashion. They're terrible ideas. I see students with them all the time, and I'm just like,
JP, big time.
I'm gonna regret that. Like the way lads were wearing their trousers down so you could see all of their pants. They're just going to be embarrassed about that in years to come. And good on you. We had the step in our day. That was a terrible idea to have for your hair. Mullets have never been good, not even in an ironic context.
Connor saying in the chat, did Jade really frog splash Aubrey Plaza? Is that a real thing that happened in that
yeah, it was. Was that who it was? Aubrey. Yeah. Frog splashed her. Pretty decent one. I mean, she's not taking it. Clearly, she's been, CGI'd in there. That'd be a terrifying. Otherwise, she'd be landing right. She's lying on her side as well, so she'd have fucking killed her ribs. But yeah, decent set of adverts, and it shows. She has that kind of look. I wouldn't be surprised to see her fronting up on many a campaign in the future for WWE. Jade Cargill.
That's what she's there for. Well, before we let you go, Matt, we're about to get into the AEW TV stuff, which I'm sure you've got ample thoughts on. Anything else from you've seen this week? Unless, you want to use the opportunity to talk some NXT TV. I saw SmackDown this week. SmackDown was all right. It's fine. Some good WWE TV matches. I think AJ Styles has perfected that formula for me. Him and Sami Zayn. No better forgettable WWE TV match workers than them two.
Him and Drew and Randy and Sami Zayn. What about... always listen to every show this network does. Ben is big on Tyler Bate and Pete Dunne. They've got the big shot coming up at Elimination Chamber. No comments on that one, where they beat DIY.
What year is it?
They're not going to win, though.
Back to just SmackDown now. Fucking Wade Barrett, Drew McIntyre, them two, Pretty Dead. Did they all just sit around talking about their FPL teams or something like that? It's all Brits. Nick Aldis, like, what's going on? What's in the water? Like,
yeah.
And yeah, they are of them. That's the lowest rung, by the way.
Don't you think they'll get the belts though? To get the belts off the Judgment Day, it could happen, Benno. Serious, they could actually win the tag belts. It's wild, but no. When AEW, as I said last week, I thought that it would be a draw with Swerve and Hangman. It would be a three-way at the pay-per-view, and that's the best way forward, because although they had a singles match, you want the proper big retain single match, don't you, down the line for the belt. That makes sense. And I agree with what you guys have said. Swerve and Hangman should be that feud that starts off, mid-card up, and then eventually should be for the title. So hopefully that's the way to go.
Good to see them be the focus of things. Yeah, last week's Dynamite was a fucking absolute cracker, and long may that continue. Didn't really with Collision, but we'll get into
that's enough for AEW for me. That's enough from AEW for me.
There. We'll get your thoughts on Rampage another time, mate. But Pritchard out soon.
Hollywood Rock. Obviously, looking forward to your choice, Benno, to do the homework on that this week, and looking forward to recording that. And JP, as always, have a good show, my friend, and I'll
will do, mate.
See you.
Thank you, mate.
Take it easy.
Mate. Well, on that note, we should talk some AEW. Yeah, as I said, JP, we were both very, very positive, I think, on last week's Dynamite. Love the Hangman Page and Swerve opening, as we talked about. Love the against what we would normally say about them, the Young Bucks closing angle. Love Sting and Darby winning the tag belts. Just all in all, a great episode of TV. Was last week's Dynamite. Got an exciting debut coming in Mercedes thrown in there in the mix as well. It was definitely one of the better shows ever. Continued on at a great run of form, I would say, for AEW. Not sure that run of form continued on to Rampage and Collision this week, but they were decent as well. I mean, maybe we could go to Rampage first. I don't know if you want to carry on the Young Bucks point with Dynamite, JP, to run through it chronologically. Because we did start like I say on the weekend show with it was unfortunate there was a lot of news on Friday that praise maybe got a little bit buried, but just to reiterate it, cracking episode of TV and the Young Bucks were the main characters on it. So great to see the follow up in front of, as Matty would say, 300,000 people on Rampage on Friday.
Yeah, it's a strange one. I mean, I'd heard that the thinking about them having it on there is because they didn't want to overshadow from Sting if they debuted their new music and stuff on the pay-per-view.
That's a fair point, to be fair. That's a good counter to what we were saying.
I can get that, but I still think there's episode of Dynamite you do it in between. I think that would be, still get yeah, exactly. That feels like the much more natural place for it. And it was strange because obviously they came out because it's taped on the same night as Dynamite. So they come out in the same suit, obviously covered in blood as well, but a very, very heavy Succession theme that they've gone with for it, which I don't know. It might end up being the theme for this week's episode. I'm not entirely sure about that because it didn't really grow on me. I don't. Yeah, that's the problem. It's not a good knockoff. And it hasn't got any kind of real epic grandeur, and it's still them in a private plane. They borrowed Tony's private plane and they've just done some filming in there for the day with Brandon Cutler. And here you go. Here's your entrance video. And it's like, we like Succession. It's about sort of powerful people. So here's a theme tune that sounds generically knocked up to sound like it. It wasn't what I would say necessarily exceptional or stand out. Maybe it will grow on me because I'm pretty sure the first time I heard Roman Reigns' theme, I thought, what the fuck is this all about? This probably would have seemed silly.
I never made Succession a comparison with that one until very late on. Until really, I literally mixed the two for an intro for Spotlight. One's still proud of that. It came off well. I should maybe got another career as a DJ one day, JP. But I never made that connection genuinely. I was like, oh, actually, they do sound the same, don't they? This was too on the nose though for me. It's again, fucking love Dynamite. Thought that angle was the best thing the Young Bucks have done in years. It was serious. It was the blood on the white suits. It was fucking. Like we said on the weekend show, JP, it had a bit of time to breathe. It was just properly done, main event feeling for the first time for them in a very long time. Angle, brilliant money. Money in all ways, and you add that as an extra layer on top of Sting's retirement anyway, which is the draw for most people for Revolution coming up. I was bang into it. Rampage on the other end. I don't know. I feel like it was back to normal. I know I've seen people like it, and I've got to be careful with words here because, for me, if the Young Bucks made their meal ticket, their money they made, all of their successes, the reason AEW exists in the first place was built on irony, wasn't it? It was built on ironic, winking at the camera gimmicks and stuff. But it actually pulled me back a little bit to and I bet a lot of people listening to this haven't seen Rampage. hopefully it was just like a dress rehearsal for what's to come, because it was too much that for me, for something that's going to be a main event angle. But too much wink to the camera, like you said, too much. Oh, here's some, some shiny cars, and it's a bit like Succession, isn't it? And I'm Matthew, and that's Nicholas.
Yeah,
Chikara for me. It's a bit mid card comedy act, and though that's why I pick on my words, like, because I know that's been the knock on the Young Bucks forever, and a lot of people would say that, and then they sell 1 million t-shirts and start a wrestling company. So like that, I promise you that is not lost on me. But as we've been consistently saying with the Bucks, once that mainstream wrestling company started and they were on a television show that's been watched by almost 1 million people, not this one, but you kind of had to step your game up, and I don't think they found that second gear. And it's funny because in Dynamite, I felt like they found that second gear. This felt a bit regressive. This felt a bit, I'm in Chikara, and I'm an ant, and I'm a fucking, I'm a bagler, and I'm a fucking, prison guard. Early 90s WWF, if anything. It's just a bit. We all know it's not really, we're leaning on reality with the EVPs things, but like it's with such a wink and a nod and such a cheeky grin. Maybe they're getting the right heat out of me as well, JP. I've got to throw that in too. But yeah, it wasn't the follow up that I would have wanted. I think I would have, like you said, would have left it, came back for Dynamite next week, because it fit Rampage, to be honest, because it was very Rampage level. It wasn't the main event act I thought I saw in Dynamite last week.
And in front of the same crowd that already appeared in front of, to have that hot angle as well at the same time. So when they come out, it's not like you're getting a hot, fresh response, which even they would have had if they'd been on Collision. It would have been in front of a group of different people who would have reacted to it in a certain way. So, yeah, I as with these things, it makes me wonder, okay, what's going to happen in terms of Dynamite? Where's it going to go? I wasn't mad keen on like you were like on the promo afterwards, which it was far too kind of snarky. And I think in some ways, like what I preferred on Dynamite, it is them, like you said, but built on irony as well. But what I liked about, in terms of, you are changing your gimmick and you want to update it, like you do have to update a lot more aspects of it other than the look and the theme music you go by. And it would have been, that's the thing. And I think if they'd like done something like the idea of what I liked about them being on Dynamite, they're just silent killers. They just came out there and just beat the shit out of them. And that, for me, felt like a lot better than what this was, which was still a bit too close in terms of like how they're delivering the promos afterwards as well. Like, particularly Matt Jackson, like he's the one. Like, I mean, he sort of, I just thought, well, this isn't really necessarily too much of a change from what he's been like before, but I don't know. At least it's something. I'll say it's better than what it was before. I prefer this to them fucking spinning their heels, not doing anything. Because I know as much as I've slated them over the last like kind of couple of years at this point as well, there's a reason why I have them in my top 5 tag teams of all time, which is my defense mechanism now against anyone who ever says, "Oh, you just hate the fucking Young Bucks." It's like, nah, I'm on record as saying that.
We'll do that mixtape one day. We'll drill down to what was the week that JP actually did like them. We'll find it.
Yeah.
We'll find it there in history. A few weeks, actually. A few months, maybe. Even years. We'll get there. But yeah, like I say, mixed thoughts on that. I love Dynamite, so willing to see what they do on Dynamite this week with more serious of a match with Top Flight. What did you make of the Collision as a whole? I definitely think, obviously last week we were raving about, weren't we? Maybe this week, obviously, Danielson not being there, being over in New Japan, I don't think I fully computed that when I sat down on there, actually live on Saturday night to throw this on, which might have been my fatal mistake. Maybe what we loved so much about last week, Swerve was a centerpiece as far as like his in-ring promo. Didn't really have that either, did we? The Swerve Hangman thing, and Joe that's been anchoring the shows right now was kind of absent. This felt like a bit of a B-show collision, really, just one of those very skippable collisions with some fun stuff on it, but maybe not enough fun stuff to mean that you need to go out your way on Sunday morning to get it in.
Well, this was the weird thing. Some of this, because Vicky was out and Charlie wasn't playing ball, I ended up seeing live. So it was like the weird situation of me watching any kind of late night wrestling. So I was like kind of even bemused by that. And in some ways, I wish I'd just saved it all for the day, because when I caught up with it, we have been kind of spoilt with Collision in like the last few weeks with it. This was clearly not on the levels as well. But what I would say in terms of positives is if we're talking about, say, Revolution and the build to that, it feels like it has certainly succeeded in fleshing out a few things in terms of particular stories. And it just sort of adds to the idea that in terms of the creative direction, that there is like a clear direction, as opposed to that point in time, sort of in the summer, late summer, where they were just throwing shit up against the wall and seeing what sticks. That we're somewhat away from that. And for that, I'm grateful, because we haven't had that for a long time. But at least it felt like, but it didn't have like the kind of the killer stuff that was on it the week before. They almost did the same thing they did with Eddie Kingston and Bryan Danielson, but this time they did it with Deonna Purrazzo and Toni Storm. And, that's still at the same time, like, it was like a lesser level, but it's not like I disliked it, but it's like the Lucha match was down from what it was on there the week before. The main event, as much as I, kind of got good really towards the end, was down on like kind of the week before and stuff like that.
Without even watching that, I could have told you what happened. Like, I fell asleep before that point. Woke up and watched it the next day and was like, you know what? I enjoyed my sleep, never watched it and gone, you know what it was? It was Orange Cassidy versus Tomohiro Ishii. That's what it was. And it was exactly that, maybe a lesser version than you'd want it. And that's the thing with Ishii and Suzuki, isn't it? Like, I think, Tony loves getting his money's worth out of them too, but like, there's obviously, for logical booking reasons, a ceiling on what you can do with them, because they've got to come in and lose. So it's an inevitability, isn't it? You know the result, you know what's going to happen, and if anything, if you're someone who knows them, you're not really excited anymore because you've seen it so many times. And if you're someone, one of those rare casual fans, who doesn't know them, what are you really buying into? Because they're just two old losers who come in and lose all the time, who have fun matches. It just kind of felt a little bit like, record full in case of emergency. Tony Khan, like, fuck it, Rocky, can we have Ishii in for this rando collision? Because he'll deliver, to a certain minimum standard. But that was all it really was, really. Yeah, it just didn't speak to me, Collision, this week, which is a shame, because I agree with you. I think the overall I've been enjoying. Still enjoyed, Daniel Garcia getting a little bit of a shine on the show. Not the greatest reaction for him, but it built up. It built up over time. So he's in there and coming out twice on a show is like an Attitude Era staple. Getting the Copeland segment as well there, which is a little bit lost in some of the. I do enjoy the rankings. I'm not a rankings hater. I think rankings should be worked, and rankings should, if your matches are worked, then your rankings can be worked too. No problem with that. Love it being a vague 5. Just the obvious problems with having 4 men's singles belts rear the head, because you've got Cope and you've got Garcia having to justify why apparently it's very important to fight over who's going to get the TNT shot, because Copeland is ranked 3rd, and in one fell swoop as well he kind of just dismissed all of Eddie Kingston's 12 belts or however he wears it. There is a bit of a problem there how you set up contenders for your secondary belts that they're not nailing exactly, but at least as far as making Christian's belt feel important, and as far as making Garcia feel important, and obviously presumably we're getting that with Coke coming up as well. It was another another like box tick for me as far as Daniel Garcia's like ongoing push on the show goes.
It did make me wonder, are we going to end up in a situation with rather like when he returned to WWE, where pretty soon he ends up turning heel? That was what I ended up coming away thinking. I was like, are we going to end up in that situation with Adam Copeland in AEW as well, where it's like, I don't really know what else we're going to do. We could end up kind of turning him heel at some point. I think, again, this is what I mean about fleshing out the undercard. The idea of Daniel Garcia versus Christian at Revolution is like, I think that's a good idea. I mean, that would be obviously the direction I would definitely go in. You give him that win over Adam Copeland, whether or not putting the title on him, I could see them doing this in some ways, but it's kind of like, I don't know. There's still that part of me thinks that they really heavily invested in. It would be a very different direction to what the TNT belt has been by putting it on Daniel Garcia, and I don't have the faith that they wouldn't get bored. This is the other thing as well that I need AEW to do, is to prove they're not just going to get bored of people. So while we're getting a whole lot of like Queen Aminata and even a Brian Keith promo, for fuck's sakes, like how soon? Yeah, how soon is it going to be before they get bored and they decide to kind of, change course and just there's a new kind of flavor of the month, and it almost feels like it's a make good what they're doing with Daniel Garcia, but he is doing, particularly as they've been kind of pushing him towards the trios titles, but then that's not a direction that they're going in at all with him and FTR. And I think they're the things I was kind of like thinking, okay, if these are things that are going to appear in the undercard of Revolution, it just gives it that bit more depth, and at least we've got reasons for these matches to exist, rather than like kind of like wacky multi-person tags, which I don't have any time for at all anymore.
We'll be talking plenty about them when we come to New
yeah.
Japan in a little minute. But yeah, on that note, we should talk like what's coming up with AEW. Obviously, Dynamite this week. We'll have the Adam Copeland and Daniel Garcia match on it. Apparently, we're going to get promos from Hangman Joe and Swerve. Not sure if they're in the building or not. As mentioned, we get Matthew and Nicholas Jackson, because that's the Heat, versus Top Flight. Sky Blue versus Willow Nightingale, and then apparently some debut of a Tony Storm film coming up, which she was building up on Collision as well. JP, very much on the road to Revolution. Any thoughts on any of that?
I mean, to be honest, this feels like we're going into kind of, and I don't know whether or not this has anything to do with basketball, because I know Collision on next week. Is it going on about being live in 2 weeks? Is it a taped Collision at the weekend? I'm not entirely sure at time of recording as well. But looking at this one, it feels like, again, it's just part of that sort of, it feels like somewhat a mid-level Dynamite, if I'm going to be honest with you, looking at this, but like still building up towards Revolution. And you go, okay, but we're not having all those, it feels like all those big kind of announcements. So we'd be waiting for like, we'll talk about it a bit in terms of say an Okada and things like that. It's going to be like, they've got the direction of what they want to go to at Revolution. We'll have some kind of announcements there. And then afterwards, obviously you've got the big business show. And then that's going to be a lot of the direction that they're going to want to go in. So yeah, I can't pretend that I'm excited by it as well. Just particularly, I think it was the Tony Storm film. I just went, bollocks! Like, here we go. Like, I can't be arsed with this. I really can't. I could care less as well. Yeah, maybe it'll be all right.
Some other quick notes. Obviously, we had some quotes from Tony Khan this week, talking the opportunity in TV for US market rights, specifically noting the WWE's deal with Netflix. He spoke to Denise Salcedo on this, and obviously kind of said a lot without saying much. We have a streaming platform, we're available domestically now, and obviously that's a library is something that we could use to monetize that, and fans have been waiting for it. So kind of non-answer that side of the question, but when it comes to TV broadcast rights as well, noting obviously right now we have a great thing going with Wednesday night on TBS every Friday and Saturday on TNT. Didn't really get drawn too much either on this new mega sports streaming service, JP, that's allegedly coming, that AEW have been very much left out of the conversation on. Did you draw anything from his comments on this?
It's just that it's probably more just the recognition that he has content to sell, and by God, he's going to find a way of selling it. And they have plenty of it. I think that's the thing that is not to be kind of like thrown away, is there is a big back catalogue, and that's part of what he wants to do. I think he's very, very nondescript with this stuff, whereas Nick Khan feels like a lot more kind of very much like willing to talk about things like kind of basically breaking up rights deals, having them across multiple different services, to the idea that, say, on this new streaming service that Rampage could go there, for example, would be something. I think there's still the idea that he wants to sell a lot of this as a job lot. And I think that's actually kind of where the money might be, is in kind of being able to ship these kind of smaller products. But I suppose if you look at the ratings for a Rampage and a Collision, they're hard things to flog for kind of serious cash by themselves. That if you bundle it up with Dynamite, then it has much more value. And then if you add the pay-per-views into that, where they've got that core 100 to 150,000, audience, and I expect Revolution to do really big numbers for them as well. There is more to flog on that. It's going to be again, that's one of those sort of long-term stories on that are going to be sort of coming out. But I suppose it's just that at least he has plenty of content to sell. That much when you figure in how much content AEW has produced over 5 years. When you get Dark and Dark Elevation into the mix, like they're able to throw that into. We've got all these multiple, tens of thousands of hours that we're able to kind of flog to a streaming service. I still would expect them to end up on there. They'll want this. It's like I said before when this story kind of came out, it's a game of niches, and wrestling offers a niche, and people, and as we know with wrestling fans, is even if they're not as big as, say, a Premier League fan base, they're gonna buy, they're gonna spend money, and they're gonna pay for this kind of content. So maybe he'll even get Ring of Honor on there. I don't know. Will he finally get some money for that? I think that was one of the questions that we asked at one stage.
One day that investment will pay off. But talk about all the wrestling fans out there. The last AEW story we got on the rundown before we get into our guest joining us and other matters. We did cover this a little bit on the weekend show as it kind of broke as we were recording, just with an offhand comment on a wrestling podcast. But AEW reportedly running another stadium show in the US. Any further guesses on this one, JP? Apparently, it's not MSG, is what we know. I think as we narrowed it down, I think this has got to be. I mean, it's. Again, what can you use to draw a stadium-sized crowd with the AEW product right now? We're in a rebuilding stage, as we've rightly said. The Sting retirement has appeared to be a hot ticket. We talked a million times about how we'd have a fantasy book that for Wembley. That's off the table. I do think All Out is probably off the table, like running 2 stadium shows back to back, unless it's 2 nights like a 2-night WrestleMania, and somehow Tony gets all his talent on a plane back to the US to do a stadium show the next night. Maybe don't think that's happening. I think that kind of still just leaves Forbidden Door or potentially Double or Nothing. But again, it's Vegas, so really, is that going to happen? That's as we saw with the Super Bowl yesterday, that's a fucking gigantic stadium that it'd be tough to fill. Any additional thoughts on that?
It's an interesting, because obviously we say in all of this, he owns a stadium. He has a stadium in Jacksonville where the Jaguars play. It's just not a big enough market, and it wouldn't never shift enough tickets, would it, to go to Jacksonville? I don't know. I feel like I need to ask Karen about this when she comes on, because you have I just don't see it kind of selling out. But Forbidden Door seems like the likeliest one for me. And in many ways, I do wonder whether or not it'll end up being a stadium in Texas. If only, and this is probably quite lazy on my part, it feels like it's going to be very much a 3-way Forbidden Door this year, and CMLL are going to form quite a big part of this, and they're going to try and use that lucha branding, and in the way that WWE have done this before, and we've seen them do this historically, where when they're in Texas, they try to get in like extra kind of like tickets through the lucha market and everything else, and whether or not that would be a possible direction. And I don't think Texas is short of a stadium or two, is it? Let's face it, if it's anything like kind of like, I don't know, if it's a college football place, there's fucking loads of them. Can't move, out there. So they're not going to be running Cowboys Stadium or anything mad like that. But then it's also the size. What would they have to draw it? Because, as we'll probably get into, what does New Japan have to offer for a Forbidden Door that's going to feel fresh and unique as a kind of like a big start and a big draw in the future? And I think this is where CMLL comes in. And then you think, well, where's CMLL going to be able to draw? It's going to be, whether it be in the south and southwest of the states. I think that so you'd almost say that possibly around that part of the world. So if I was going to hazard a guess at this stage, I'll probably end up going for Texas.
Well, on that note, we will bring in our resident, our guest who's about to join us on the show. Maybe can help us answer that question. It is Grapples now. I'm saying Japanese wrestling correspondent, women's wrestling correspondent, American geography correspondent.
No, not the Australian wrestling specialist.
Australian wrestling specialist.
Absolutely not.
Everyone should be.
Post wrestling / grapples. Karen Peterson. Hi, Karen. Great to have you on.
Hello. Good evening, gentlemen. Hi, everybody.
Hello, Karen.
How's it going?
Oh, good. We've just been excited to test your geography knowledge. We've obviously got the Okada bit to chat about it in a minute. I mean, I want to know before that. Obviously, you were listening in on the pre-show. I don't know if you had any hot takes on Super Bowl snacks or the best fruits or any of that stuff that was going on there.
Usually, if I go to a Super Bowl party or I entertain, I tend to be more of the traditional wings, burgers, hot dogs. Finger foods are great, but it depends on how many people you're serving. I mean, I do love a good charcuterie board, but not everybody enjoys picking at cheese and tiny slivers of meat when they're watching the footballs. So, but yeah, no, I watched it last night. It was the first time in a couple of years that I've watched it, but I had no dog in the fight. None of the teams that are from Florida or from where I grew up in like the tri-state area by New York, New Jersey, none of them go. So I'm just like, sure. Though I am glad that, I wasn't drinking too much, because had I taken a shot every time Taylor Swift was on screen last night,
Jesus.
Like it was literally every 5 to 7 minutes they were cutting to her, because American football is a very slow sport. There's you move a couple of yards, you stop, you start over. It's not a very fast paced game compared to what the rest of the world calls football. So but yeah, I enjoyed it, but again, I don't normally follow professional football closely.
Me neither, as you probably heard on the pre-show with my lack of knowledge.
That is absolutely fine. No one's going to judge you.
I think the NFL are happy that the Chiefs won, if only because of the Taylor Swift connection and how much money that she is. What's it said, like 400% spike in Kansas City Chiefs merch, and like 300% increase in I think it's like through just sort of young female audiences that are like just sort of all these signs up, people going, I know nothing about football, I'm here for Taylor Swift. It's just like a thing that's been going on.
Sports always talk about that lucrative 18 to 49 demographic, but y'all underestimate the women, and more specifically the Swifties.
Yeah.
If Taylor Swift isn't walking away with a Super Bowl ring after yesterday, I don't know what they're doing, honestly, because she's brought a lot of eyes, over there. And it's always one of those things where it's like, oh, well, girls don't like sports. Yeah, we do. But also, if wrestling's any indication of other professional sports, we also want to feel safe when we watch the sports. And football, hockey, baseball, you name it, they all have their problematic people, unfortunately.
Totally.
It does make.
I saw a lot of pushback on the Swiftie stuff, where it was like, it's all these little fanboys and girls who are just blind loyalty. They don't care about football. They're just blindly following her. And it's like, do you not understand how sport works? That's pretty much how most football. It's like we always say about British sports. Like for me, it's like all my family support Everton here, and it's like what. At a point in time, my granddad supported them, my uncles did, my dad did. The only thing that's remained constant is them. The team changes, the kits change, the managers change, the personnel change, the stadium changes. What are you doing if not just blindly following some letters and just something you've decided you've sworn allegiance to? You know what I mean? It's basically the same thing. If it's going to create new fans, then it's good.
The weirdest thing for me yesterday was watching and seeing the Nickelodeon SpongeBob SquarePants. Yeah. It gave me very much how WWE likes to do their co-branded tie-ins. That I was like, why is Nickelodeon in the NFL a thing? The N in NFL is not Nickelodeon, it's national. So what are they doing? But I guess parents and kids, they usually have kids at the Super Bowl party. So if you're gonna get their attention somehow, or get them to sit down and watch for 5 minutes, throw a SpongeBob on there. I don't know.
It is it feels like to me certainly the NFL is so much more of a juggernaut now than it ever has been in my lifetime. It's by far and away. We have the Premier League as well over here that kind of dominates so much in terms of sport, but the NFL have done an absolute hell of a job. And you say about Taylor Swift, where is she running before All In next year? She's running London. If you're Tony Khan, honestly to God, I would not be one of those wrestling fans talking about the Saints. These Swifties aren't appreciating Kazuchika Okada. I don't think he'd give a shit.
Not yet. Not yet. Let him be her favorite wrestler and let's see what happens.
Oh, Imagine she got into New Japan. I tell you what, that's problem solved in a fucking heartbeat. There, isn't
then whoever is Taylor's
You boo
manager
baby?
needs to give me a call and we'll talk.
Oh. Well, we've got you, Karen. We'll throw you in the deep end. Any thoughts on that? The big stadium show? Do you think that could be a Forbidden Door thing? Is there anything that comes to mind for you? Is like what they could do? I think we probably got to temper expectations and how big a stadium.
I feel like whatever show they would want to run a stadium with, they have to do Stadium Stampede, and depending on what time of year they're going to run it. I mean, yes, I live in Orlando, which is like basically the dead center of Florida. The biggest stadiums there's Tampa, which is about 2 hours to the west. There's Jacksonville, which is 2.5 hours to the northeast. And then there's Miami, which is 4 hours south. If you run a stadium show in the summer at any of those, you either have to worry about hurricanes, stifling and smothering humidity. And it's always a very difficult market because NXT runs this market and they run their shows for cheap. So, I mean, it all depends on what the action plan is. I kind of agree with JP that, Texas is also a viable option, but it all depends if they're wanting to run a college stadium or a NFL size stadium. That's the big thing for me because, while NFL is a big thing for you all, for me, college football was my thing because my school not right now, but they used to be national champions, and my conference is one of the best. So I'm a little biased, I know, but it's one of those things where there are plenty of states that have multiple state schools where they could easily sell it as a stadium, and they hold substantial numbers. They're not as cozy as the more spacious seats that you'll find at a professional sports stadium, but it all depends on what their end game is and who they're wanting to highlight. And yeah, when you mentioned about who New Japan could possibly send over for Forbidden Door, I don't know anymore. Don't get me wrong. I am a ride or die for Tanahashi, but as we've seen recently, his knees, good old love and energy, are basically holding together by love and energy at this point. So I don't know. Same with Naito. Yeah. I don't know.
It feels very like it's going to be like WWE booking the Invasion at this point. Maybe Tony Khan will have to come up with his own New Japan stable or something like that he can.
Well, I mean, he already has allegedly Chaos and has the Pew Pew Posse or whatever they're called these days. I mean, you have groups that are in AEW that were, I don't want to use the word poached, or they started out as a rental and then kind of like decided to ditch their current for the one they were cheating on with. So I just don't know. I mean, CMLL could be a very fun mix, but again, my biggest beef with Forbidden Door has always been it's not fair booking when it comes to who wins and who loses. New Japan tends to lose a whole hell of a lot more than AEW talent does on those shows and any other show that New Japan talent is on.
Yeah, it feels very like it's like the old kind of world where we're going to get into the Okada story here, where obviously like it looks like he's AEW bound. We think we'll talk about that report, but like it's like the old ways where New Japan was very much the dominant partner, and look at the Ring of Honor relationship. Ring of Honor was constantly in that position where they were constantly on the losing side, constantly not having the power to do what they want, or even at the start of AEW when Tony Khan, I'm sure, still holds that axe to grind about not having access to the talent that he wanted from New Japan. But it just kind of, I think it's worth a bigger conversation because we're going to talk the New Beginning shows and we can talk about what they've got scheduled for Okada coming up. But just that bigger story, I'd say, JP, like we talk about the effect that AEW has had on the indies. And obviously, if you're an indie wrestler, if you're Nick Wayne, if you're Brian Keith, AEW comes calling, of course you could sign them. Of course, with limits, AEW should be signing this talent because it's talent that's available. Of course, if Will Ospreay's available, of course, if you can get Kazuchika Okada and you can pay him more money than, that he would be able to earn in New Japan, just from a pure business point of view, that's Okada, that's Will Ospreay. Of course, we've got to sign them. But there comes a point where it's like, again, while that's maybe an understandable decision, it's the effect on the overall ecosystem, isn't it, that comes as a knock-on effect of that. It's not even, for me, not even necessarily a criticism. I'll criticize Tony Khan for, maybe having too many toys in his toy box he doesn't play with. But as a general idea, I don't necessarily criticize him signing Okada. I don't necessarily criticize him signing Ospreay. but it affects the lay of the land as a result of like those decisions and the result of the money that he's got to throw around compared to where New Japan is in the world. It's like I say, it's upsetting things, isn't it? It's making it's upsetting the power balance and kind of just the the business that we've taken for granted over these last years.
One of the difficult things. Oh, sorry.
No. You first, Karen.
One of the difficult things that I've noticed is that, New Japan, like Okada tends to be, and I always joke that, whenever Okada is like old reliable. Like anytime you need a main eventer, you can always slot Okada in. And for the last 12 years, Okada, Naito, Tanahashi, those have been the three guys. Tanahashi is now, working part-time or half-time in the office, half-time as a wrestler. Naito is champion right now, but he said when he turned 40 he was going to retire, and I think he's going to be turning 42 this year. So we could be watching Naito's last ride as well. Okada, New Japan has invested so much into him that I am concerned that they don't know what kind of identity they're going to have without him, especially because they haven't really done, in my mind, enough to elevate all the talent that is junior to him. Like, yes, that they're making Tsuji into a star. They're making Uemura into a star. Umino. I'm not going to get started on my House of Torture soapbox, but it's one of those things where they have talent, but there's no one that can be like once 8 p or 10 p.m. Japan time on the 24th. That person is the next Okada. That's the person who's slotting and taking over Chaos. There is going to be a gaping hole once he's gone. They haven't created the next Okada yet.
Yeah. And we never had that with the other sort of when Nakamura left. That felt like there was people, it was already very much set up for who they're going to put into the mix. Obviously with AJ Styles, when he went to WWE, they had Kenny Omega there straight away. They had depth and they had people that had kind of been able to kind of build to and they would go all in on. And I think part of the problem is, and I don't know if you agree with this, Karen, is there's been such hesitancy to go all in with some of this younger talent, and because they should have thought about this as a did they ever think about this as a viable possibility? I know there's often a lot of stuff said about his life in Japan and does he want to leave and work in the US and things like that, and I was just like, I don't know, like you would think at some stage that there was a possibility of this happening, so therefore we should prepare for the worst case scenario if he does leave.
That's always been like the tricky part about it, is because typically in Japan when you get hired by a company, you tend to spend your entire career there. It isn't like many Western companies where you may jump from occupation to occupation, from company to company, or in wrestling, you do a couple of years on the indies, you do it a couple, you can, the world's your oyster. You can do whatever you want, or if you want to follow the money. But Okada, to them, that he's from the time he was 19, felt like a lifer in the company, and it's unfortunately to their own detriment that he may have like offhandedly said at some point that I want to be in WrestleMania, whatever, it's a bucket list, but it's not like a reality or something I could think about. And I think that's why when AJ and Shinsuke left in 2016, they had Kenny, they had Okada, they had their backup plan. Kenny left, they had Jay, they had Ospreay, they had a backup plan. They don't have a backup plan right now. They keep talking about all the young talent. They talk about Umino and Narita and Tsuji and Uemura. They talk about Hikuleo and ELP and Hanare, but none of these guys have been given the opportunities in the last year since their return from excursion, or since they've switched factions or had this makeover to be main event stars. That they're not. They tend to circulate just under the main event. And the fact that, and I hate to say it, the fact that Okada is leaving the company and not putting anybody over is a sticking point, because, when Shinsuke left, he knew that there was Okada. But who's the next person? Is it going to be Hiromu? Is it going to be Despy? Yeah. Like, and those guys are junior weights that should be heavyweights, but we're not going to get into that right now. But it's one of those things, like, I feel like they've gotten too comfortable having Okada always there, especially, with him leaning into the 50th anniversary and all the Inoki homages and everything. It's like he was their poster child. And now it's like, we always joke that Okada had to figure out who he was without the belt, but now the entire company has to figure out who they are without Okada. And I genuinely don't think they're prepared for that. especially when they've had less than a month and a half to prepare. When you're booking your promotion 6 months to Wrestle Kingdom in advance from the previous Wrestle Kingdom.
Yeah, and it's gotten, it's clearly caught them by surprise. Whether it should or shouldn't, or whether there should have been long-term planning in there, is obviously a valid conversation. But just as far as like what is happening now, like I saw these 10-man tags get announced, and it's just like, you what? Like, what are we doing? Like, what is the plan here? Like, I feel like the counterpoint, and I've seen it made, Karen, is like people being like, oh, well, if they just randomly booked Okada versus Yota Tsuji on a random show now, well, it'll be obvious who's going over it. It's like, well, yeah, that's not ideal, but it's fine.
I mean, I would have liked
perfect, but...
I would have liked Zack Sabre Jr. to be the guy, because he's the other one. He always took a backseat to Jay and to Ospreay, even though he was winning the New Japan Cup and they've given him a faction. He's never gotten that rub, and him and Okada have had great matches. I don't understand. I mean, I get it. He's in a different faction, but I don't think Matt Riddle needs to be in this 10-man tag. I would have rather had I know they wanted Tanahashi to be the last singles match, but do Chaos versus TMDK as one of the two. It shouldn't be 2 United Empire matches.
Totally.
Yeah.
Something creative. Like, think on your feet, JP, like the chip, your back's against the wall. Yeah, like maybe it's to what Karen said there. Maybe there is something there. Maybe there's, not just nostalgia. There's a reason Okada worked Tanahashi, because he could happily beat Tanahashi and it doesn't really matter. Maybe there's a reason he's in these multi-man tags that is, politically motivated, or there's losses he doesn't want to do. It doesn't feel like a plan A. It feels like a plan B.
If Great-O-Khan pins Okada, I'm fine with it.
Right.
I'll say that, because that would mean that you've established the new leader of the United Empire.
He is the only one who should be pinning them, particularly on that second show, because let's face it, how long are you going to have Riddle for? Even if you like...
I would prefer as short as possible, but that's just personal preference.
Yeah, exactly. Yes. And I think there's zero guarantee that even if how long would he actually be there anyway in the first place? Like, I think there would be a whole series of issues about him and about his ability to kind of stay there long term. So it does make, I kept on thinking, actually, perhaps the reason behind this is they want him back. It'll be in his contract that he can do special appearances, and they want him back for the Dome, and they want to be able to keep him strong, necessarily thinking, well, maybe he'll put someone over at the Dome. And it's like, well, that's quite a long way away. We're talking about, I'm thinking about this stuff, and it's like, it's the guts of a year away. There's an entire kind of like Zack Sabre Jr. as when we get into the new beginning show feels like very much like the obvious choice of what you should go down, or one of the sort of younger guys who they've built up like out of like the obvious 4 who are positioned to do this. If you're not going to use him for these last 2 shows, you want it to be a draw as well, don't you? You want to be able to get some kind of like value out of it. And I think the least value is him hiding in 10-man tags, like, which, it already feels like, even when just looking at the card and the breakdown of it, I look at it and it's like his name doesn't stand out. Why? Because he's in there with 9 other people, and it doesn't have any kind of like, it doesn't feel, oh, this is like his big match.
It's mad though. How practically is it going to work? Because, like, we're going to get into New Beginning, and what a lovely moment it was. Like, Ospreay having his moment at the end and getting to get on the mic. He's in the middle of the card. We're not even going to get that, are we? It's just going to be like, see you then. Good luck. Like,
the thing about the Sapporo shows is that I feel like they're not necessarily designed for folks like us who sit and analyze the company and want the best for what's going forward. This Sapporo tends to be one of those destinations where they don't get to go up to that part of Japan very often. So a 10-man tag, while I disagree with it, I know why they're doing it, because the fans there, the ones that buy the tickets to keep the lights on, are the ones that want to see every single person on the card as much as possible. Because if their favorite's not there, they're selling that ticket. So it kind of sucks, because we want Okada to start doing the things, but it's also depending on, again, until there's an announcement that he has signed a contract, I'm gonna hold out hope beyond hope. And I know it's a fool's errand to think he's going to WWE, but it's one of those things where they've had, if they knew he was leaving, because typically in Japan, the fiscal year ends on March 31st. So typically most companies, even if you have a multiple year contract, every January, February, that's like kind of the re-signing window where you have to go down to the office, sign your paperwork. And that's why every year Tanahashi's like, I still work here, and posts a picture of him holding a packet of paperwork, because I had to do it the 5.5 years I lived there. So I know it's common practice. But typically around November to early January is when people start having the conversation if they're staying or they're going. And I believe that interview about Okada possibly leaving came out in November. So I don't know why there hasn't been more preparation. I know they were trying to get him to stay, i.e. letting go of Obari and replacing him with Tanahashi, but there could have been something or multiple somethings done in the intermediary to be like, well, if he stays, he stays. If he doesn't, he doesn't. And also depending on where he signs, they can't guarantee we're going to have him for a Wrestle Kingdom. Like, even if he does go to AEW, who, like, they are, with having multiple people down right now, like Kenny, they're very judicious about who they let come to Japan, and especially who could lose when sent to Japan. Like, they sent Eddie Kingston because Eddie doesn't care. Eddie just wants to live his best pro life. So it's just, but Okada's going to be a different story because they're making a big deal out of it. I just feel for Will Ospreay because there was this whole thing about him, finally getting outside of Okada's shadow. And if he goes to AEW starting, later this month, and like literally 3 weeks later, Okada shows up. It's like, what the hell was the last 8 years about? like, what do you do with them?
That's why I was holding against hope, because like that moment in the US when Ospreay and Okada had that emotional moment, it felt like this is the last time we'll do this.
It felt final.
Yeah, apparently not. Maybe that's what changed his mind, maybe that's what comes there. But you've touched on it there before we talk more New Japan. Like, what do you see the future for Okada? Like, if he goes to AEW, do you see that go well? Like, as much as I can understand, like I said earlier, the Okada's on the market, you make a bid. It's like a great Premier League footballer being on the market, JB. You make the fucking bid. If you've got the money and you can get him, it's still Kazuchika Okada. But I can't say I'm excited about it. I can't say, from the bits I've seen of him on AEW TV before, that I think he's a great fit for weekly AEW style TV. I would worry very much about him maybe being a shiny object at first, like a lot of people have been, and then maybe getting lost in the shuffle. Like, if 6 months in he's doing 6-man tags with the best friends and kind of lost on Rampage and Collision, would any of us
he's going to In-N-Out Burger with Sue in the minivan? That's what he's going to be doing. Or he's going to get the Long Boys are coming back and we're getting Balloon Okada. Like, but that's my concern.
Maybe that's a great life.
That there are so many people in AEW that he has wrestled in the past that there's a very small handful that would feel actually fresh. Yeah. And also, if you're going to go through the trouble of signing Okada, when you have arguably a very stacked upper card where you also intermingle Ring of Honor way too much. I like Ring of Honor, but if you have Ring of Honor belts and you have a Ring of Honor program, keep them over here. And also, you have to think about the talent that are there. If Okada comes in, are they all going to be okay with it? I know, yes, it's their job and they got to do what they're told to do, but from a morale standpoint, Okada comes in, you're not going to have him eat a pin on his first night on Dynamite. He's going to come in and do an Oscar run where he's running through everyone. Like, it's just like, I just don't know. Like, I want to be cautiously optimistic, but I feel like with WWE, at least they could give him an Asuka style monster run and run, because there is a surplus of people that are used to losing and fine with it as long as there's good catering.
it's that back and forth, isn't it, JP, where it's like, with AEW, match good, we know that matches will be good, like, and that's a given, and maybe that leans into his strengths in a lot of ways. With WWE, that might not necessarily be the case, but I still think they treat him more like a special attraction than I think AEW will. I just think he's gonna be on that treadmill, and I just don't know if I actually want to see it.
Like, even when he came in for the first Forbidden Door, he never felt like a big deal. He showed up in jeans and a pair of sneakers, and it was like, hey, I'm here. And half the people there didn't know who he was. I'm like, well, there goes your partnership. You're not doing your job and telling your fan base why this guy is the guy. Yeah. And that's always been my well, I'm glad he does, but he sure isn't communicating it to the rest of his loyal following.
And that's it. The idea of him appearing as a week-to-week character on TV, the way that it's generally produced, it just doesn't fill me full of full of hope. The idea of him being involved in segments are things that just don't. Whereas him as special attraction, I get it's a lot of money to pay for a special attraction, and sometimes you'd wonder about whether or not you're getting the absolute value out of it. But trying to slot him into this kind of like TV based product, and also you don't want the overexposure of him then wrestling every week because of the wear and tear he's already got on his body. At this stage, you do kind of want to keep him special. So it's a really fine line that you have to go with this if you're going to bring him in. Whereas WWE, you can see even in kind of cynical perspectives, like that they would say, okay, the best place for him isn't for him to be on there week to week, but have him to come out and effectively issue challenges, and that there would be enough people who want to have it on their career list that I wrestled Kazuchika Okada in a singles match. Like that is going to be, I think, a draw for a lot of the wrestlers. It's the part of the issue in AEW is how many of them has he already wrestled. Like there isn't the kind of like novelty value, and I don't know if it makes like a bigger difference business wise, because you have to be so careful in how you present him. But the money you're spending on him, you're duty bound to make him feel special. Because otherwise, you're just pissing money up against the wall for no real reason. And we saw, like particularly with Nakamura when he came into NXT, like he was a draw. He was like a bona fide draw. But then the bloom kind of went off that rose pretty quickly, and we saw, he became surfing Nakamura pretty soon enough. And I don't think you want to ever run the risk of doing that with an Okada. And it feels like you've got to, and I hope this is one of his negotiating points of, okay, right, if I'm going to be here for 3 to 4 years, let's say maximum, like, and he decides I'm going to go there, I'm going to make the big money, I'm going to come back and work an ultra part-time schedule in New Japan as this kind of like attraction, which I kind of wonder whether or not he'd be more inclined, to end up doing that. That could be the ultimate kind of trajectory of it. Well, I want to know what the plan is for me to be in AEW over this time period. Who are the guys I'm going to be up in there against, and how are feuds going to develop? Because obviously the thing they're going to be expecting is they're going to be expecting kind of traditional Western promos, and that's not something that he's trained to do necessarily. I mean, he can deliver promos, obviously, but it's doing it not in his native language, and that's a lot to ask, and to be able to deliver it with the kind of cadence that wrestling fans expect as well in there in the same time. I mean, they're the kind of things that ultimately end up worrying me and thinking, are AEW thorough enough to think and go through it, or do they think we're just going to throw a shit ton of cash in his direction and say, oh, don't worry, we'll make sure you're protected and you'll have these great matches on pay-per-view, but which should really be like a series of big dream matches. In many ways, they should look to how, UFC using Pride fighters as kind of like draws when they came into UFC. And so you end up with like a Wanderlei Silva and a Rampage Jackson being kind of like big deals. Now, not all of that went according to plan because people get knocked out along the way. But here you're in control of that. It's just like, what are those feuds going to be? Because again, like you, fear, we haven't got much from this week, so we're going to have him tagging with doing stuff with Orange Cassidy and Trent Barretta and Chuck Taylor. Why? Because it's chaos. And I think that the last thing I want to see Okada anywhere near is the Chaos stable, because I feel much like many stables in New Japan that they've gotten so flat. And, you want to try something fresh and something different. I just can't picture what that is in AEW.
Well, on that note, we should talk as some new beginning. We should talk as exit from New Japan. I suppose that's the perfect place to start. His last singles match in New Japan, as discussed, and we'll talk the other big matches on the show, and then maybe get some odds and ends at the end. Did manage to just about squeeze this in. I was saying before, Karen, on the newfangled New Japan World. It fought with me on the Google TV, but I got there eventually. Including I did a full Rich Craich on that one as well, JP, where I tried to put New Japan World on, and I think it was the Danielson Zach match, and I don't think I actually knew the result, but but I clicked on it, and I think you must have just finished watching it because the clicker was stuck at the point at the end of that. Oh no, it's fine. It's not a big spoiler. But could I get it back to the start of the match?
Nope.
My God, it takes about 25 minutes just to rewind. Does it? This is an ingenious thing for anybody else who might be professional podcasters like me and JP sharing one login. Fast forward to the end and then start it again. That was the only way I could get out of that trap that I was in on the newfangled New Japan World Player. But I got there in the end. Managed to get it all in. But yeah, Okada Tanahashi's kind of where I started my watching, and yeah. Felt a bit like Rock Austin when we talked, the Hollywood Rock one. Played the hits, did a little bit slower than normal. Right man probably went over. There's probably nothing to be gained from Tanahashi getting the Okada scalp, and nice bit of business. And if anything, if we are really genuinely just getting these multi-bans, this almost felt like Okada's proper goodbye.
Tanahashi tends to be the one who sends people off, and usually it's at Korakuen Hall. But in this case, it was you think about, we talk about needing people to build up before Okada leaves. Tanahashi, of course, can eat a loss, and it's fine because he's done it before. And also, I think Osaka was the perfect place because it was literally like 12 years almost to the day of the Rainmaker shock when Okada came back from excursion, and his star just like shot off. So yeah, it was a good match. It was a sentimental favorite. Okada kept saying he was going to stop crying, and he just keeps crying more, and I'm fine with it.
Feels genuine, JP.
Yeah, it does. I think the way I felt about it is it was interesting because obviously I had the great promo package beforehand, and it was just like a trip to really what is the beginning of kind of the properly hot New Japan that we think of, like just the way that he was brought in from that ropey Wrestle Kingdom debut to just beating him the next month, and it completely taking the wrestling world then by storm of like, no, they've just got this prodigious talent who people thought after the Dome wasn't going to be great and then turned out to be brilliant. And I think really the Rock Austin one was kind of very like apropos, having watched that from the Hollywood Rock, simply because Tanahashi is really being held together, like you mentioned, with just love and energy and some duct tape like into the mix as well. Like you looked at him and it was the first time. He's still in much better shape than I ever will be in my lifetime. Don't get me wrong. Yeah, it's just like, no, he's still looking great, but at the same time, he looks incredibly beaten up. And I was just reminded by Steve Austin looking like this when he was wrestling The Rock that final time at WrestleMania 19, of just like the kind of the shape that he was in. And I get the reasons for the match. I understood it. It's kind of crazy to me that, Okada Tanahashi being fourth on a New Japan card, with this being Okada's last singles match, that there wasn't as a bigger deal that he could have placed on this sentimental favor. I understand it couldn't go on after Cage of Death, but at the same time, like, you could have easily like kind of positioned
gone before the tag matches.
Oh Christ, yeah, definitely. Even if like this is by far and away the weakest Okada Tanahashi match you're going to see.
Yeah,
it's there for sentiment. It's not there for like kind of match star ratings or anything else. That's not the reason for it to exist. And seeing him cry in many ways, when you mentioned it being a Korakuen, even though obviously it's not as big, my God, wouldn't this have been better? Because they never would have had a match one-on-one or singles at Korakuen. It was always at big shows they would have done. That would have felt like a kind of a nicer like sending off for a match like this, because the crowd would have been it would have gone like hotcakes. It would have been rather like, the times when seeing like Pac versus Zack Sabre Jr. at the Cockpit in front of like 100 people going like, this is boutique wrestling at its finest. It would have been a really hot ticket for a Korakuen. Christ, you could have even announced it as an extra show. Right, the card is off. We're just adding this extra show and we're doing it at Korakuen, because I think that would have got even like better value, rather than the positioning of this, which is the thing that I probably came away disliking the most.
Yeah, like I say, it was nice to see him, look longingly at the mat and have that
Yeah.
moment. But yeah, outside of that, that was kind of the most notable thing of it. I said we're going to talk the big matches, so we'll talk that tag match at the end with the other stuff on the show, because I think that's where it belongs. We'll have our own match order here as far as what it should have been. Let's talk the other big singles match from the show. Zach and Bryan Danielson. Obviously there's the big rematch tease in there as well. I'm fantasy. I love that they showed the footage from Triple X in
Coventry.
On here, like obviously with Chris LeNay and Spud and John Lister in the front row there back in 2008. Danielson did say after the match, we want to have a match on neutral ground. I know a British wrestling company that runs Coventry. I don't think that's happening. I'm not putting that out there. Just saying.
Pub in Coventry is stuff of nightmares for you, given the last time you were there. You bloody hated
I'd
the
go
place.
For this. I'd go for Zack Bryan.
Don't y'all have a stadium show coming up in August? A big English stadium show with like an English star.
But is that even ground though? I don't know. I don't know what will count.
He might argue it's AEW, but it's England.
Britain.
Yeah.
So you
could
get away with that.
It was the same thing with Ospreay working it last year.
Yeah, that makes.
I guess
sense,
it all depends if Zach's IWGP World Champ by then.
Yeah, there could be a lot of politics in play there, but yeah, I suppose it could meet the definition of neutral, and yeah, there's not many of them unless it's happening in Mexico. I think that's probably, like you say,
Australia,
the league candidate for. Yeah, it could be there. Yeah, who knows what could happen in the next month or so? But yeah, outside of that, obviously another killer match from these two, and yeah, I'd have it up there with the first one, JP.
Yep, absolutely. I love this today. As I mentioned earlier on, I watched this quite late, and I watched it today. As I tell you the whole story, Vicky was having her eyebrows done, so I was waiting in the car. I was with Charlie. He was sat on my lap because I thought, well, this will keep him somewhat distracted. And again, the poor child was force-fed wrestling, and we watched this, and it was brilliant because I think even he got drawn into it. And that might be the ultimate sign of praise for a match. If you can keep a 9-month-old baby quiet, like generally quiet and watching the match, then my God, you've transcended everything. Like you've transcended children's television. Can't do that. Cars 2 that was on earlier on couldn't keep him kind of as distracted as what that match did. I just fucking loved this. I really did. I just thought from beginning to end, there was something about this that was just so fluid. Like when there was the 20-minute call, I was genuinely shocked. Even though I knew how long this match was going to be, I was like, wow, that 20 minutes just absolutely flew by. And if there was an issue, the kind of Zach leg injury bit that kind of felt a bit forced, and it was like, oh, okay, so it gives Danielson a kind of a part of the body to attack, but they do it so well. It did give the match like a bit of directions, because at the beginning of it you've got like the brilliant like sort of reversal exchanges, which only these two guys can do, and they're both completely credible at being able to reverse the other. You're like, yep, this isn't like there's nothing easy about the reversals, which sometimes you think, well, if one of these guys are in there with a lesser opponent and they have to try and get them through, then they're all of a sudden they're there's not as much talk on any of the sort of submissions and stuff like that. And
the danger of that, isn't it? It can become a bit too exhibition-y, like they're just having a little jiu-jitsu roll, you know what I mean, just to please them. So they probably did that. I'm guessing they did that backstage, and that's how they worked out some of like these counters and more.
Oh yeah,
there's more thought into it than that, isn't there?
But it had that. It didn't feel like an exhibition, and that probably is like the greatest place for a match that is an exhibition match in some ways. That's really, really what this is. It's like, kind of returning the favor. And when Zach then went for the neck, like, and he does that kind of like the foot twist. I can't think of what the name of it is. That was more like kind of out of desperation than it was. It was like a defensive move that he had managed to kind of put in there as well. And the crowd were completely like along the ride for this. And it was at this point I thought to myself, Jesus, you need to be really you need to be putting Zach as your top foreign wrestler. That much goes without any, I don't think you need to say anything more about that. He's completely the obvious choice. He's got his own faction. And, you know, as you've said before, Karen, like, this is a guy, obviously, you've given him New Japan Cups, but he's never had that sustained push at the top. And he should be that. He needs to be that.
He needs to win the G1 this year.
Yeah, he does. I thought he might win it last year. He was like my kind of like sort of outside tip of like the non-obvious choice of like, but he feels like a go-to sort of choice for that. But here,
with Okada, Ospreay, and Jay White gone, come on.
Yeah.
There's no more excuses for Zach not to win it.
And the thing is, as well, like, you know, we keep talking about Tony Khan being like, he's almost like the, you know, the smiling bank robber who's like, you know, I'm your best friend, but I'm going to take all your talent. He's had Zach for a long time, like, as far as doing ROH stuff and doing, like I say, the odd AEW appearance. And more to the point, Zach has had that experience, and he doesn't seem like he's trying to get out. He doesn't seem like he's, you know, winding down in New Japan. He seems to enjoy doing that stuff. But for him, I think, reading between the lines, he seems to just enjoy being in Japan, doesn't he? And he seems like someone who's more, you probably could tag the, again, it's the landscape we're in, so who knows, but you probably could trust a little bit more that he's going to be around too.
One of the things that Zach said in his post-match promo was New Japan needs to be more cautious to stop being so Americanized. So it's he said the thing that a lot of people have been saying, but no one was willing to admit, is that New Japan leans too heavily into the WWE, AEW style of wrestling. And it's got, while it has given them some elevation and it's given them some more international exposure, it's also taken them a fair bit away from what they used to be.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, he's such a and I think it helps in many ways that he's had the experience of going to AEW and not being kind of being used as like a spare part that you could book in the Ring of Honor, which feels like a waste. He's had that experience also in the Cruiserweight Classic and didn't like it.
That was my first experience with seeing him in the Cruiserweight Classic. And you could tell that there are certain people that, even though they have the star power, it's not the right fit for them. Like Zach undeniably has star power. He has the talent, but for some reason, I don't see him ever going to either of those companies full time. I would rather see him just either stay in New Japan or go freelance, start training people and opening up his own school at this point. Like it's just, and that's fine, honestly.
And he ticks the boxes of what they want in the main. This is a guy who delivers, and again, you'd be able to speak better to this than I ever would do, Karen. His Japanese promos have the right amount of kind of the cadence, the delivery of them as well. Crowds are engaged. It feels like he is able to kind of like truly translate, not like this is him like speaking in a, you know, he's delivering promos in a way that audiences are going to engage with. And
he's lived there long enough that he's picked it up. And I think from a Japanese fan standpoint, it reminds them of when Kenny used to speak in Japanese, and that's especially part of the reason why he gets so endeared to them. That he's gonna walk around and, you know, call people all sorts of words that the Japanese people do not need to be learning. But at the same time, he makes the effort. And like, I even still stand by the fact that, you know, Ospreay was really down on himself about his inability to speak Japanese, but he tried, and that's more than you can say for a lot of people that go to a foreign country.
Yeah,
you know. The Japanese people weren't giving anybody the what chant. Just going to leave it at that.
But they were so into this as well, weren't they? I mean, because you had the yes chants, like you had things like that as well. And I think the thing about this match in terms of like the hook for that third match is we haven't had a submission yet.
Correct.
Because I think that there was the thing that they built up quite nicely in this is the idea of wanting to make the other guy submit. That was like, that's the real idea of it. But they kind of both realized actually in a kayfabe way, we're not going to get a submission, so we're going to have to actually just get a pin. Like, just in order to win this match, like, we're going to need to get the pin. And yeah, I think in some ways I wonder if I preferred this to the first match, which is completely high price.
The first one. Could do with an app for that, couldn't we? That would help. That'd be helpful. But,
I almost want to say, did I say 4.75? There's a part of me fearing, did I say 5 stars? Like, because if so, then I'm duty bound to give this exactly the same. But I do want to say 4.75 is where I like it, which is an incredibly high rating. But I think I'm going to be remembering this at the end of the year because I just loved this so much as well. And it felt it felt like it fit in, particularly having seen, like, you know, you saw video footage of classic New Japan in terms of Okada Tanahashi. It felt like it fit in around that era of New Japan. Like, this is the kind of match that, you know, we would have seen in 2016, 2017, and we would have thought, like, fucking hell, this was incredible. I loved this.
I would love to see what they could do with it. I would give it 4.75. I'm also a sentimental sucker for both of them, so I would give them a 5 easily. But that's just me, largely because I love technical wrestling, and even though this was like a 35-minute match, I was dialed in and focused on it the entire time.
Yeah,
that's hard because it's like, you know, when we get to the next match, I went and made brunch. I set up a spread. I poured a glass of wine. It was just like, and that match doesn't move as fast as this one did. I think it was the fact that the movement in the Danielson Zach match was constant. Like, they had 35 minutes, but there was not many rest holds. They were just out there murdering each other every 6 seconds with something new. And the flash pin, I do love a flash pin instead of like when Danielson kicked it out of the Zach driver, I was like, oh, we're doing this now, are we? And I actually preferred the flash pin to a traditional, you know, smash his face in and then just pin him.
And for these two wrestlers, that's a win. You know, a win is a win. It's like Bret Hart back in the day, you know what I mean? He was the wrestler who pulled that off, and it wouldn't be cheap. It wouldn't be the way the WWE would book something like that. It's slip on a banana peel. It's, as we talked about again, JP, Hurricane Pin in the Rock. It's not that, is it? It's, you know, he one-upped them and he won. But also leaves a lot in the tank for another go. But yeah, loved it too. Thought it was great. And speaking of long matches, we should talk the main event. I don't know if I call this a match. I think it was an experience, you know. Like I don't know whether I should keep it to be. Speaking for me only, I watched the previous 2 matches we talked about with the Japanese commentary on. For the main event, I put the English commentary on. Regretted it, but I put it on because I knew it was long. I didn't know how long, but I knew it was long. And exactly as Karen said there, you know, I wasn't quite, you know, as I did in Brett and Shaw and JP go in the shop during it, but I knew, like, what are the chances that I'm gonna be able to not take my eyes off the screen at any point for this. And in a way, this was kind of a match built for that. It was, like I say, it was less a match, more like an all-encompassing sights and sounds experience for that amount of time. And don't get me wrong, there were multiple times during it, well, and this is probably a slight, where they were losing me a bit, and I was like, fuck me, is that not the finish? Is this not over? Are we not done? It felt like, okay, Francesco Akira feels like he's going to win this for the team here, and then 25 more minutes went by, and it felt like there was a couple of peaks like that I think they were by design, definitely, where I was just like, okay, come on, we've got to end. But then once it all did finish, and we got Ospreay in the end, at the very end, actually finally getting to say his goodbye, but not before we got the, you know, the big moment where you're putting over, for whatever you think of it, you know, the new stable over and putting them over strong and letting them have their moment. By the end of it, was I satisfied? Did it achieve every single aim it needed to do? Did it feel like I just watched a war? You know, as you've rightly said, JP, you know, this is kind of New Japan's Cage of Death. Did I feel like I'd seen a Cage of Death? Kind of, yeah. Was I uncomfortable in parts? Kind of, yeah. Was it violent? Yes. Did it feel earned, the violence in it? Also, yes. Like I say, I wavered multiple times during the match, JP, but at the end of it, I think it was a good bit of business. I don't know whether I'm on an island here and you two are going to disagree, but overall, I pretty much universally enjoyed this.
Oh, I think I'm kind of with you. Really, it's too long. Like for my taste, it is like good 25 minutes too long. It's too.
It's a director's cut, isn't it?
Yeah,
that's what it is.
It is. If Michael Cimino is making wrestling films, then maybe this is it. But it's not quite Heaven's Gate. Like it's excessive. That's really what this is. This is just like wrestling of excess, where there's just so much stuff, and there's some stuff in it which I thought was so brutal, and then it, like, the ending is far too long. However, for all of that, did I watch all of it? I mean, some of it I was like, I didn't switch off. I didn't turn away. This was a match actually I ended up watching live. And I was just like, by the end, I was just like bamboozled, like, because it was like 11 a.m. and I was like, fuck me.
Probably about 12 by the time they got the cage.
I think the last time I felt that way is when I went to the cinema and watched Girl with the Dragon Tattoo remake. And that was like that was at 10 a.m. and I went, this is too much for 10 a.m. This is too hard. Like, and it was 11 o'clock when I'm watching this and I'm like, Jesus, people are pissing blood here. And I've been up for a little while, but I need to settle into the day before I have to deal with something like this. This is something to definitely watch into the evening. But it did the job, and in some ways it's kind of like symptomatic of like, because I can see Will Ospreay having like such a big hand in how this match being put together, and it felt like I've written the Cage of Death stuff there, not only because it looked like a Cage of Death match, but what a CZW Cage of Death match is like. They were too long and they were excessive, and people did bonkers, batshit things, and that's what we got here, and it worked for what it was. It's obviously entirely different from what you would have seen in New Japan, and it was wild, and I enjoyed it. Like I say, I enjoyed it. Like I enjoyed certainly bits of it. Yeah. I don't love it or anything else. Would I go back and watch it again? No. I just sort of, as soon as it finished, I went, I'm not going to sit back and watch that for the rematch. I'm not. No, there's no way I'm going to be able to sit through that because it's just too much.
In December for your match of the year list, mate. Rewatching this, I don't think anyone's going to be doing that, are they?
It'll be in the I remember it territory.
Yeah. Make sure it's not on your dealer's choice list. Just saying.
Christ, no.
In about 10 years, maybe we'll come back. Like,
mixtape of Cage of Death matches.
Like, I don't know, are we on an island, Karen? Because I think I've not heard your thoughts on it, and for me, like I said, I think even though they lost me multiple times, like to colour that in a bit more, it felt like the violence escalating almost made it worth it. Like having that big crescendo with all the ring boards pulled up, that felt gigantic when it happened. The little moment you had, with Ospreay and Francesco Akira, and he's like saving his little buddy. Like it was like the end of a 3.5 hour war film, and it was like, you know what, they've earned this. They might have punished me a little bit in bits, and there were little bits where I was ready to walk out the cinema. But once I got to the end, I was like, you know what, you earned this reaction from me now, lads, because it did escalate in the right way. It did feel like a war. And like I say, it felt like it achieved what it did. Don't know if you want to talk us down off a ledge, Karen.
No, my biggest concern for David Finlay as the leader of Bullet Club was, what is it going to take to solidify him as officially the big bad in the company? And the way that they built this match, starting at New Year's Dash with the brawl that led to a double disqualification, and the fact that like in the Road 2 shows leading up to this, they were systematically like they were hurting Jeff Cobb, and they were making Francesco Akira. They all got in his head, but Maloney was stabbing him with forks, and like they were breaking down everybody that is on Ospreay's side because Ospreay wasn't around. So they were like basically Finlay and company were trying to pick everybody off, because the biggest thing that you have to worry about is, one, you have to make sure that David Finlay looks strong and he's the new big bad, whatever. But you also have to make sure that all the work that the United Empire has done the last 3 years, because they're going to be left behind, and a lot of those talents are guys that the company has consistently relied on, whether it's in a G1 or a New Japan Cup or a mid card title or circulating around the upper mid card, that Finlay and the War Dogs, who they're a bunch of I always call the BC War Dogs Katsuyori Shibata's home for wayward children, because they were all ex-Young Lions that had a big chip on their shoulder. And, even when they were all face, I love these guys more as a heel group. And the fact that they all came out matching gear, yes, please, and thank you. I love that they all, even Finlay, even as the leader, he showed up. He had his t-shirt on, but he was wearing the matching boots and camo and all that. But this match, was it long? Yes. But I feel like in order to keep Ospreay looking strong in defeat, keeping Finlay looking strong as the new big bad, keeping the rest of United Empire, they had to be broken down so much for it all to be believable. And unfortunately, that meant the match had to be really, really long, have a lot of plunder. Did I want to fight Dan Maloney as he dragged poor Callum Newman by the neck with his little fork bandolier on? Yes. My biggest pet peeve about that part was that he got cuffed to the cage, And then Marty Asami has to step over him to lock the cage. And I'm like, you don't have a handcuff key on that key ring with everything else. You have that was my only big thing. But that
they struggle with the props. I think the cage itself as well. Got to talk.
Yeah.
But it made sense in the sense that eventually it meant Okan had to come from the back to free Callum. And because they had already, Hanare was, I was legitimately concerned with how much he was bleeding from the head.
Oh,
very Jay
but
Briscoe,
he had gotten cuffed to the cage. Jeff had gotten cuffed to the cage, which was, it was also good for Jeff and Hanare in the sense that it didn't make them look weak because one, they're both injured, but also it was like it started cutting away all the supports under Ospreay before they started tearing out the ring underneath him. I liked that for the most part, Geto stayed out of it until it was absolutely unavoidable. And you didn't hear him screaming very much, which was also like, that's always one of my pet peeves is how much Geto screams for Finlay. We know Finlay's the rebel. We all need the rebel, whatever. I liked, as much as I don't like hardcore matches, this had a little bit of everything to the point where when Clark Connors dumped out the thumbtacks and TJ kind of throws him face down on top of it. The fact that Jun Kasai tweeted at Clark after him like, "Hey, how'd you enjoy that? Did you enjoy it?" And Clark's like, "I am never doing this again." Like he completely broke character. He's like, "No, Jun, we are not having a match ever." But yeah, I started getting concerned with when they were tearing up the ring simply for the fact that the boards, you could see how loose they were, that Finlay almost fell through. Other people were almost falling through the boards trying to keep the match going. I think that Red Shoes and the other referees officiated this match much better than they have with other like Western style hardcore stipulation matches, much better than any of the lumberjack matches. I feel like, the way that the cage was set up, it kept most of them, with the exception of Red Shoes, out of the way. But and also TJ giving Clark that what was it, the face wash with the barbed wire wrapped around his ankle. I was like, Clark's gonna lose an eye. What are we doing, guys? But it's also I liked that after the finish. Did I tear up when he pushed Akira out of the ring? Yes. Did I feel bad when Akira just kind of rolled and went face down? I was like, oh, that's gonna hurt. Yes. He
kind of had him in his arms, like kind of.
Yeah, he's like creating a little baby bird. He's like, no, not my son. Don't talk to me and my son ever again. But this match was everything it needed to be in order to not only put Finlay over, let Ospreay leave looking strong, but also give stories to the rest of the United Empire and the War Dogs moving forward. I would complain about the way House of Torture tends to circle the drain with Chaos and GOD and stuff like that. But the rivalries that they have going on amongst this group of people, I'm invested in it. And also, because Okan was earlier on the card with Callum, it was an entirely all foreign main event, minus Red Shoes.
Yeah.
And that says a lot of how much the company believes in these guys, especially the ones that are choosing to stay behind. I don't know if all of them are staying behind, but as of right now, they're all still on the card. So,
and that was the strength of the match as well. Everyone getting the moment, including Callum, who it felt a bit weird that he was in full gear. I mean, I would put a tracksuit on or something, mate. Like it was odd.
Yeah.
But
he did get dragged by Maloney, so we don't know what state of dress he was in at that point.
About to get in the shower.
Okan came down with his Osaka best, like super satin bomber jacket. I'm like, can I have one of those, please? I don't know. It would look terrible on me, but I was like, you know what? It's a fun jacket. And then Ospreay got his little graduation send off with like G1 confetti and a kiss from Alex Windsor. Love her. And and they all went around their merry way.
Well, there you go. Even Alex Windsor, being part of the story, and obviously the moment when Ospreay came out at the start of it. Like I say, everyone kind of got their little moments in the match. Even the TJP thing, which I hate.
Aswang
Staff or whatever his name is. Like it's awful. Aswang. It's the worst. It's the worst. But it kind of, for this type of match, it kind of fits, and it kind of made sense that he was the last one alive on his team. So he had his moments. Like I say, Francesco Akira was a massive star in this match because he had multiple moments, both as a sympathetic babyface and as someone finally fighting back. which I think the English commentary worked against a little bit, but you know, he still pulled it off. And
I like that he got creative and climbed over the side of he came running through the arena as if everyone just like sauntering down the ramp when their music hit. Akira was just like, I'm just gonna monkey climb this and just dive and fly. Thank God everybody caught him. I mean, he's not the big. He's probably arguably besides Callum the smallest of the 10 of them, but it was it was good.
But the crowd were with them all the way, weren't they? For every bit of it. And I feel like that unique element of it worked too. The fact that it was like you said, JP, I think I was picturing in my head a 2-ring War Games match. Instead, it definitely looked more like Cage of Death. Bit shorter than Cage of Death was that cage. Bit ropier than Cage of Death was that cage. There was definitely moments where anytime anyone bumped off it, they were like slowing down to half speed before they hit the cage, just in case it took the entire thing over. Probably could have done with some young boys on the other side just holding it up or something like that. But the unique spectacle of it, despite maybe some of those misgivings, really worked for the live crowd even, didn't it? Like, you were going nuts for all of it, and where it didn't seem, again, despite the commentary against it whatsoever.
And I think because they had, and this is the idea of having an all-foreign main event, you had people who are kind of familiar, I think more familiar with how to do these kind of matches raised in. They would have been studying War Games matches and the like and thinking, okay, what are we going to be able to do? What are the kind of excessive spots? Because there's a lot of times when New Japan, I think, and this is where the King of Pro Wrestling titles come into the mix, where they've tried weird spectacle and it just doesn't work. Correct. Like, it's just far too wacky. It's simplified. We're just going to do a War Games match and it's going to be batshit and brutal and very, very violent. And I think this is one of the sort of stranger emotions I had at the end of it, where I thought if Bullet Club War Dogs lost the Bullet Club part of their name, I would like them as a stable. I'd be really because I'm, as I've, the long-term listeners of the show will always feel like I am obviously like kind of the sympathetic story of the stories of trainees as they come through is always like the story of New Japan for me. Like, whether it goes from a Tanahashi and Okada and Naito, all of these people and how their careers develop and how they develop as people are like kind of interesting. And I thought like along the way, I like Gabriel Kidd in this scenario. I like Clark Connors. I like Alex Coughlin. I like Dan Maloney being in there as well in this kind of like prominent position. I like the idea of it. David Finlay without the Bullet Club stuff. There are points where I kind of, I understand all of the reservations, but I have seen him have good matches in New Japan. That can't be kind of lost. Yes, granted, one of them is against Will Ospreay, which apparently is everyone's de facto best match they have in New Japan is with Will Ospreay.
Weird that, isn't it?
But there are times with him that I'm kind of
pro about him as well.
Yeah,
that big Fight Club Pro match with him.
Oh God, yeah. I'm really like I'm more willing to give him the kind of the benefit of the doubt. It's just the Bullet Club stuff is this stuff that I can't deal with. I've no interest in that. As soon as that name is involved, it's an active turnoff for me. But as a unit, I like them, and they're more, dare I say it, in that kind of traditional mode of this stable and its various incarnations of just being fucking horrible, like the first version of Bullet Club, where they were just beating up people all of the time under Prince Devitt. That's what they did, and this was much more inclined with that, with people like, and I'd certainly put the tag belts on Gabriel Kidd and Alex Coughlin. Like, just put the fucking tag belts on them. They're like
belt the whole unit, all of them.
Yeah, as a wild tag team unit, that's the kind of stuff you can do. Like putting the junior belts on. I'd love to see Clark Connors have a junior title run. Like, I want to see him pushed into that kind of realm as well. There was a lot of them and a lot of the individuals in this match, for all of the issues I have with it as a match itself, they all came out gaining something, I think.
Correct.
Which is fundamentally the important thing. And you mentioned, Karen, about the importance of Finlay being established as the kind of big bad as well. Like, if that is the job, is to try and get, up to like 10 other people over in any other ways. And I'm hoping that for Alex Windsor, that she even gets some bookings with New Japan / Stardom.
She needs to stop working with Tokyo Joshi Pro. That's where it gets tricky.
Ah, God, yeah. That old chestnut again.
Yeah.
But so, he got it's the crazy thing. He got a bigger send off and a more emotional send off than what Okada has. Like,
I was thinking they weren't going to do it when he got the big entrance and the crowd are singing along to the song, even to like the Osprey bit. That was goosebumps, and you could see he was soaking it in. And I felt like you could explain it in a way, but David Finlay maybe cracked character a little bit. He was like smiling on, but he got to play it up like, oh, I'm smiling because you don't know what's coming, you bastard type of thing. But it was genuinely nice, wasn't it? And like, having Alex Windsor there as well definitely added to it as well. And then the fact that he got to have it at the end as well, and he got that moment of being in the ring with the full stable for one last time. It was massively memorable stuff. And it is odd that it's happening for Osprey but not Okada. But any other notes on the match? Because I loved it. You when you mentioned the boards bit, Karen, that just made me think of remember the TNA match over Rich.
I remember that
the LAX interview. Same thing where it's just it adds that level of danger because you feel like someone's going to go through it at any moment. There were loads of moments like that for good or bad up the violence level. Loads of the spots in it. Loved the bit when Osprey ended up. The pin got broken up by him getting pile driven. I can't remember who I think it was Maloney, the pile driven.
Yeah, he did the Driller Killer.
Driller Killer it was. Into the stack. Loved all of that. Just loved it, the chaos of it, as far as like putting a match together like this and doing a big epic New Japan match, but with 400 people and giving everybody something to do, including Callum Newman, even including Gedo, even including Great-O-Khan, all these people. Can't really fault it, even though I'll also fault it. It worked though at the end of the day.
This kind of stipulation should only be used very, 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 very sparingly, though. I don't want to see a cage match every 6 months or every year, even. Like, if you're going to send somebody off, and you're like in a grand way, yes, bring it back out. But the fact that they haven't had this style of match in like 20-something years, that says something. I don't want it to become a regular occurrence because that will diminish the importance of it, if that makes any sense.
Yeah. Any thoughts on the rest of the show then? If we're done with the main, is this where we mentioned the tag title match? I'll be honest, I skipped over that. Hence why I skipped over it here in the sounded bad.
It was not a good time. As someone who is a staunch Kenta fan, I was not having a good time in this match. It should have been, if they were going to put the belt on Kenta, Ishimori should have been his tag partner. That is all I'm saying.
It's Chase Owens in New Japan. It's just someone who I've wondered ever since he appeared on there. Why is this man on these shows? He's don't loyal. Understand it.
He's a company man. That's why he reaps the benefits of it.
But it's just this idea of like, God, the thing I came away with this, apart from the fact I was able to do the washing up while this match was on, because I just thought, well, I'm going to make a better use of my time at this stage, and there's a load of washing up that's built up, and I need to get it done. So I went and did that, and I thought to myself during this, I was like, do you know what? They run all of these shows. It's in their own interest to have a good tag division, and there is the potential for it. There are people they could put together as teams that could be somewhat interesting. I mean, Bishamon is a perfect example of that, where they've made the most out of the team, where I thought there would be very like limited interest in it. But you know what? They got some use out of them as well. And here, it just made me think, I don't really want to see ELP in this environment having to kind of do a lot of the heavy lifting for Hikuleo. This version of Kenta I'm not interested in. Along with Chase Owens, as a part of me just thought there are some younger guys and this is where they should be. The tag division should almost by default, if you're not going to be pushing a lot of them in the main event scene, this needs to be really the Gabriel kids, Alex Coughlin, putting together, I don't know, Yu Yamura and Despy. If Despy gets out of the juniors and you're doing like kind of just more interesting things. I think even if you have a Hanare, Jeff Cobb tag team into the mix. There are like interesting units you could put togetger.
TMDK were on commentary. They were literally sitting right there. That's what I don't understand. They were right there.
But they need to be able to headline some smaller shows with some tag belt, to at least be like a good semi-main, and we don't even get those out of this. It was just a somewhat depressing experience watching this.
There we go. Well, yeah, unless there's anything else on that, we could talk, obviously, other matters quickly, just to say what's kind of coming up for New Japan. Obviously, we had some additions to the New Beginning and Sapporo lineup there as well. Obviously, we talked about the Okada stuff that's in there. Good to know that, Tama Tonga's getting a proper farewell, though, of quite far as important people to give farewells to. He's doing all right. But yeah, we got that Sapporo show coming up 10 days from now, which is obviously got Dave Finlay versus Nick Nemeth on it, Tanahashi, Matt Riddle, Evil Show 3 men on. We got Despy versus Show on that as well, and then of course we've got Naito. So we've got Nagata versus Zack Sabre Jr. there as well, and it's going to be the winners of Naito and Sanada, and the winner of Despy and Show facing off as is tradition for the big anniversary show coming up, the 52nd anniversary show as well. Lots going on over on the US end as well. Windy City Riot is fast approaching in Chicago, as well as apparently the Toyota Arena, which was a big announcement on this show, in Ontario, California, which I always have to remind myself is in California, not Canada. It's going to be hosting New Japan's
big arena
in May.
Yeah,
it sounds like a big JP.
They used to run the Walter Pyramid. That's what they've always run over in Long Beach and Ontario area. So moving to the arena, the Toyota Arena, is a big step for them.
I think it's interesting because the ticket sales for Windy City Riot have been good. Like, I want to say they've done closer to like 4,500, 5,000 for that announced, and it was only with part of the arena open. Let's just face it, Tony Khan would be loving these numbers for a Dynamite, wouldn't he, or a Collision on here at the minute. But for New Japan in the US, where we have seen sometimes like the crowds haven't been particularly great, this one on the back of, and honestly, Karen, thank God you're here. You can remind me what was the name of the last kind of big US show they did? The one that was really good. It was
the Battle in the Valley back in January.
Battle in the Valley, yeah. And I thought that was a cracking show, and it felt like okay, so they've kind of managed to kind of do something hot with that. And you look at some of the names involved, like Hiromu Mustafa Ali is an interest. Yeah, that's an interesting match. And the fact that Takahashi has re-signed, I'd hope he'd say, "Kia, can I wrestle in the heavyweight scene now? I've done everything I can at this level. This feels like a kind of perfect send-off to kind of like move him out of that division." Obviously, Naito Moxley is going to be a draw, and now you've got this Eddie Kingston 3 mystery partners versus Gabe Kidd and 3 mystery partners, which sort of resembles Jerry Lawler versus Shawn Michaels at that Survivor Series that time in was it 95? I want to say it was the Knights, yeah, that he had on there. That maybe that'll be the case, but I expect other stuff to be on that card to be pretty good as well. And so it makes me wonder, like, what else are they going to have for the Toyota Center? Like, what is the, you'd like to think they're going to be trying to pull in a few more favors and they're getting a few more people in there as well. Whether you get a Danielson on there, like I don't know, whether you want to go Danielson Shingo or something along those lines for the Toyota Arena, but it feels like in some ways they've actually got some momentum in the US, which is something that they haven't had for a little while. And I think with the Windy City Riot, it's shaping up to, hopefully, fingers crossed, after Battle in the Valley, be a good show.
I went to the Windy City Riot 2 years ago when the first time they did it, and it was a fantastic show. The Chicago crowd, they're kind of like, Chicago is kind of like Osaka. Like, if they don't like something, they're going to let you know it. What I'm interested to see about Resurgence is that New Japan is claiming it is going to be their biggest show ever. So if that means they are going back to the model of pre-pandemic where they bring the entire roster, I am going to be very invested in it. I'm not flying to it in May because that's expensive for me. But the biggest thing about the anniversary show, Show said that, or he took Despy's belt and said that he wants a challenge, and then Desperado said, "You as a wrestler have no value right now as you are. So if I win, you're going to become my pashiri, which is basically my manservant. So basically, if Despy retains, he's going to make Show join Strong Style, meaning he's going to rescue him from House of Torture. And if he does that, he deserves the Tokyo Sports MVP of the Year award." I feel like the bigger money match is going to be Desperado versus Naito. My love for Sonata aside, Sonata versus Show, as they are right now, is not it for me.
As long as they're getting Despy in that heavyweight scene, Karen, Christ, it's been enough time.
I feel like Despy and Hiromu, if they're in Super Juniors, this is going to be their last year. Because if they're not already going to be slated in for the New Japan Cup, the two of them need to be in the G1. They have transcended the junior division at this point. They don't need to be. Bring back Robbie Eagles if you need a junior that you can rely on, and that's a babyface.
Yeah.
Well, on that note, while we got you, Karen, if we're done talking all things New Japan, we're not done talking all things Bushi Road. We can't have you on, Karen, without getting this in. Get your thoughts on the current situation with Stardom. We've had a couple of news notes come through since the weekend show there that we recorded. At the minute, Bushi Road reportedly have attempted to re-sign Stardom talent after Rossy Ogawa's exit, with many refusing. This going by way of the Wrestling Observer and Dave Meltzer, saying that most Stardom talents under contract through March. Mayu Iwatani is known to have a longer contract due to the movie about her life later this year. That there's others Bushi Road has attempted to sign to longer deals, but many of them refused. Iwatani is the biggest star that Stardom has locked longer term. They've went on to say that there won't be a mass exodus because Bushi Road has been offering a lot of those contracts, and the underneath talent at least have been signing those deals. And that also the Bushi Road told all wrestlers' employees that if they did want to leave, they'd have to give notice by, and this would have been 4 days ago, the 9th of February, so they can get the booking order and championships in order for the future. I mean, yeah, it's been a gigantic story for you to cover, Karen. Things are splitting off. Rossy Ogawa's doing his own thing with all his untold millions apparently he's got from the Stardom sale a few years back. Your head must be spinning from all of this toing and froing. Where'd you see it going?
What? Well, my head's been more of a disappointed head shake for the way that the Western audiences and not media but promoters have been addressing this particular situation. Because, so as I've said before, in Japan, fiscal year ends on March 31st, meaning that most places start sending out contract renewal notices November, December, and usually January by early to mid-February is when people decide whether they're staying or going, because the new fiscal year starts April 1st. So the timeline goes that Rossy told the company in November that he was leaving. Now, he's been with the company for almost 5 years. He made a lot of money, arguably, probably. I don't know what the financials on it are when Bushi Road bought the company and acquired it. So I feel like him choosing to leave, he's not going to leave without a plan, and he's not going to leave broke. So, but the other thing is that a lot of people don't acknowledge the fact that a lot of the girls that are in Stardom right now that have been there, a lot of them grew up wrestling in Stardom. That's all they know. And in Japan, we always talk about corporate loyalty. A lot of them have probably spent more time with Rossy than they have their own families with, as heavy as Stardom's touring schedule is. So for them, it's like I don't want to use the phrase father figure because that makes it kind of weird, but it's they trust him. And I feel like they wouldn't choose to leave if that's not what they wanted, because over the last 18 months, there have been times where Stardom talent has actively spoken out against the company, including Julia, whether they disliked booking of certain matches or, how the company is being run, or, that like they were bringing in so many talent at some point that the people that were there were constantly getting shoved to the bottom of the cards because they were bringing in so many hot new stars. And it's one of those things where I feel like the way that it may have caught wind was that, Rossy probably told the office he's leaving. One or more of the girls overheard it. And, if they're already, unhappy with the current situation and the company doesn't show any signs of changing, they're choosing to leave. And, you can't fault Okada for leaving, for wanting more, the Elite leaving a couple of years ago, and get mad at these girls who are choosing to leave because they want more out of their careers. Some of them, that Stardom's all they know, but being a Bushi Road talent also severely limits where you can wrestle. Normally it's just Stardom. In the 5 years that they've had Stardom, they haven't run another United States show until this year in April. They ran one in April 2019. They never ran another US show since then, since the company acquired them in October 2019. And, you know, they've been featured on New Japan shows, either in dark matches or an occasional showcase. You know, they were half of the tournament to give legitimacy to the IWGP Women's Championship. But at the end of the day, Stardom is not New Japan's talent. And a lot of Western individuals seem to constantly forget that, you know, if even for a Forbidden Door show, you know, both years, that weekend, Stardom was running shows because their calendar is so heavy. And the way that, you know, when some of the talent started telling Bushiroad that they weren't re-signing and that they were choosing to leave, when big names started cropping up, the office panicked. I can guarantee you that the way that it happened is like the way that they put in the press release that they believed that Rossy Ogawa was poaching talent. I don't think he was bagging and tagging girls, throwing them in cages and taking them away. They were choosing to leave. But too many individuals seem to be infantilizing the women, thinking that they can't think for themselves because they're all in their teens and 20s or early 30s. The ones that are choosing to leave, I'm fairly certain, know what they're doing. And if they don't like it and they want to go back to Stardom at some point, they can. That's fine. But the fact that they had their 13th anniversary show in Osaka on the 4th, they took a big group picture in the ring together for the cover of Weekly Pro Wrestling, and then sent the press away and then took everybody backstage and fired Rossy in front of them. That's not okay. Because a lot of them owe their careers to him. A lot of them support him. So if they choose to leave, that's their choice. If they choose to stay, that's also their choice. But the way that that Okada, not Kazuchika, Taro Okada, the way he made it sound like everybody was leaving, that there was going to be this mass exodus, of course, it caught fire. And all of a sudden, oh my God, it's going to be the next Misawa Noah exodus. It's going to be this whole big thing. But my gut is telling me that that's just a bit of drama to get the fans and other promoters and other wrestlers on the side of Stardom. As someone who's worked in the corporate and public sector in Japan, that is how corporates work. They're going to say and do what they want to protect themselves and endear themselves in the public image. Like there's this really bad NXT promo that somebody did where it was in the last couple of weeks, where it was the three faces of the Japanese, like the public face, the face that they show to those who are their close within their true identity, their true self. It's the concept of saving faces. You always want to put your best foot forward, but what we see versus what is actually happening behind the scenes are going to be two different stories. And the way that the Japanese people conduct themselves, we may never know unless somebody does a tell-all interview or if Rossy writes another book, you know, right before he's done with wrestling and like tells his side of the story, because basically Rossy's just sitting there and letting people say what they want, because at the end of the day, he knows what he did. And he just said, I'm leaving. I'm going to set up a promotion. And then people are like, well, if you're going, I'm down. I'll go. And like, you can't blame them for wanting to leave especially if they're not happy. If Bushiroad ponied up and started offering more lucrative contracts to get people to stay, good. Because I am fairly certain those girls were grossly underpaid to begin with. Especially when you're bringing Mercedes Moné in for $100,000 a pop, when the girls in Stardom who are keeping the lights on every day aren't getting near that much. You know what I mean? Yeah. So it's one of those things, like if you have the chance, a friend recommended it to me. It was on the Observer Podcast Network. It's Jim Valley and Fumi Saito's Pacific Rim podcast. This past weekend on the 10th, they did an episode, and it is an hour-long conversation. And Fumi talks in length about, he doesn't drop names, but he kind of gives a feel of how many people may be leaving. It's not as many as we think it is. What kind of belt structure they're going to have in the new promotion. It's really fascinating. And there's a whole bunch of information where it's the people are getting so excited and being like, oh, Bushiroad's or Stardom's the worst, Rossy's the worst. Calm down. Calm down, please. It's not that deep.
Do you think that part of the problem is, I mean, just trying to think about this, like I can, from the outside looking in, there was a lot of like kind of hope of when Bushiroad took over Stardom. That first of all, there'll be a financial stability. They'll be doing like a lot of heavy promotion. So like the idea that they'll be the face of several marketing campaigns of stuff, non-wrestling related products, kind of building it up as well. But then we get to a position where we're talking about these New Beginning shows coming up in Sapporo. Maya Iwatani defending the IWGP Women's title, fifth from the top against Mina Shirakawa, which kind of suggests to you like where that ends up ranking within the kind of hierarchy of how they feel. It's a title that's very sparingly defended. So there isn't that necessarily that faith on it on that side. And you mentioned about the schedule. I think the thing that has been I found difficult to kind of follow with Stardom is the schedule is relentless in terms of big shows and pay-per-views. And unless you're really on top of it, it's hard to keep up with. The injuries have really kicked in. And it, you know, the 5-star Grand Prix was kind of like a great example for that. It felt like one of the snake bitten ones as well. And this has been a Bushiroad tactic sort of post-COVID about trying to raise revenues by basically working people into the ground. We saw it with New Japan all of that time. And I think there's probably, there'll be a few people thinking, I want to get off this train because this is like long-term for me, while there is probably an element, I imagine an element of stability staying with Stardom under Bushiroad, you're also going to be work like a racehorse. Effectively, like you're just going to be run into the ground, and you know there's a relatively short shelf life, and you know you think of the injuries and people have ended up suffering along the way. Of you know, could easily see them end up going the grass hasn't been greener on the other side, and maybe that this is the first time that Stardom talent actually are able to kind of leverage. They've got another company to kind of say, actually, I'm going to go over to here. And there is that kind of option for them to leave Stardom and, you know, possibly for the first time ever have a chance to maybe go over to Tokyo Joshi Pro. Like there is those chances. And the US, as inevitably will end up happening with Julia as well, once she's kind of helped Rossy Ogawa's promotion get off the ground. And maybe do you see that being the situation here where actually the kind of power dynamics here have kind of shifted away from Bushiroad's we're just going to run shows relentlessly until people drop.
It's one of those things where, like you touched upon all the injuries from the 5-star and how heavy the schedule is. Like even when they had the strategy plan for this year, last year, Maya Iwatani point blank asked Kidani, you know, the owner of Bushiroad, she's like, I'm defending my belt at Wrestle Kingdom, right? And he's like, not really. You're going to defend it at the Tokyo Dome City Stardom show, which is not aired to nearly as many people the morning of, and maybe we'll put you on commentary. But it's like, that's one of my other frustrations is that the IWGP concept is a great concept. Don't get me wrong. But the execution of it after they minted the belt and they had a champion, it completely undid all the goodwill that they had built up for it. And also the lack of understanding that Bushiroad owns Stardom and New Japan. So if you ask New Japan to borrow Stardom talent, Stardom can say no. Bushiroad can say no. And it's not Rossy's fault because when Stardom got bought, Rossy was apparently given the impression that he would have exclusive sole creative booking, like oversight. And no sooner did he, you know, sign the dotted line, it started getting taken away from him. That, you know, the president of Bushi Fight was co-booking shows with him. And that's continued. So, of course, you're going to have miscommunication like you do when you have multiple people trying to book the same promotion at the same time, as we've seen. And this was the point that Fumi Saito brought up, and I never thought of it until he had said it, was that like they had these like wacky fun, they were trying to do like Bushiroad Stardom, like what they call showcase shows. And it was like, there would be a Falls Count Anywhere match and a costume match. And like this, like all these random matches that have no, like virtually no build, no consequences. But they opted to have a casket match. Why is a company that had a talent die several years ago running a casket match on multiple shows? That's not okay. That's problematic, and no one's called them out for it. Because I can guarantee you that wasn't Rossy's call. Because he's still friends with Hana's mom. Why would he be okay with that? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So, and that's why I was very heated, but kept to myself when a certain United States-based promoter tweeted some very not so nice things about Rossy getting fired, and I'm like, "What are you doing? Stop it!"
People
that's clown shoes.
People want to automatically make Tony Khan the good guy in every situation. And he's like, he's a message board poster like us. Isn't that what we do in the message boards? I can't see a justification really for this one.
No,
like it isn't. He's not the good guy. It is. He's the
how are you
spoiled brat millionaire.
Yeah.
He's not getting the Christmas present he wants. Like that's basically what it is. He's been told no for once, and this is how he reacts when he gets told no. You know, you don't often hear people talking about it in those terms because it's Tony Khan. He's everyone's best friend. But that's clearly what this was. You know, it's entertaining. I'll say from my part. I don't know I know you wouldn't agree there, Karen. But overall, it's like not justifiable though. It's not. He's not on the right side of history by any means. You know.
And it's one of those things where I break it down to people like this. Think of Bushiroad as, in this instance, as a toxic partner. If they wanted to do things for you, they would. If they wanted to send talent to work Forbidden Door, they would have. If they wanted to regularly send talent to AEW to work AEW, they would have. If they wanted to send talent to work New Japan shows in the US and in Japan, they would have. And they haven't. They've chosen not to. They've chosen to keep Stardom separate. And I know with Mayu's film coming out on March 17th, my personal hope for her is that that movie comes out, it premieres, she does the press junket, and she's gone. And Stardom is going to have to learn who they are without the icon, just like New Japan has to figure out who they are without Okada. Because if I feel like them explicitly saying that Mayu is under an extended contract of some kind because of the film, that's a bit of a tell that she might be one of the ones who wants to leave.
And you wouldn't blame her.
And I feel like the ones that are choosing to leave could, they could either go with Rossy to his new promotion, but who's to say some of the girls don't want to go freelance? They see all these girls doing all these different things, doing tournaments in Europe, and you're going down to Australia. Why not? And you know what? If they leave, then maybe that's time for Stardom, the new Stardom, because it's not Rossy Stardom anymore. And Rossy even said that. They need to figure out, with their limited experience in booking, because they have confessed in the media that both Oyama, the Bushiroad merchant manager, and Okada have minimal to practically no experience booking wrestling shows. Although Okada was part of a pro wrestling club when he was in university. And that's a stark departure. When you have a Cinderella tournament next month, that's a stark departure from what Stardom has become, built on the backs of these girls these last 5 years.
And
yes, Stephanie is 100% correct.
Yeah. Yeah. And just as a sort of final thing as well, I think it can't be overstated how profitable Stardom has been for them, for the amount of investment that Bushiroad has come in over this time.
What won it, JP, when they first bought it? Like, it was a constant discussion topic, wasn't it? Or when they bought it, before they bought it?
It was number 2. They had the number 1 and 2 promotions in Japan. Like they did, and they were running like kind of big shows. And as with anything, there's not that level of appreciation. And we spoke about it with New Japan to a degree, and you can see it here. Obviously, as you laid out there, Karen, they've not done it with Stardom either. There isn't that level of like kind of planning and long-term vision of what do we want these companies to be and how do we want them to draw. That's just not present, and it's very much sort of flying on the seat of its pants. People being put in positions of power who really have no right to be there, kind of just like corporate people, and we're seeing the effects.
Yeah, and I say all this not because I'm anti-Stardom all of a sudden or anti-New Japan. It's just my experience working in that sector. I understand. Plus, I may have friends that work there and or worked there, past tense, so I know what's going on. It's just one of those things where just because it's not out there doesn't mean that things aren't in motion.
There we go. Anything more on that for you, JP? Always fascinating to get Karen's like.
Oh yeah.
On these matters, I think it's funny because there's almost been like a war in the media the last while based on who people's sources are, what parts of this story you actually hear. So definitely interesting for me, JP, to get the bit more of an inside track on it than some of the misinformation that's maybe out there on this one.
Well, Karen's the empress for a reason, and this is why. Just listening to that, that is absolutely why.
No one listens to me. I'm just a woman who talks about the wrestling.
Yeah, there's been a lot of that knocking around.
Yeah.
Yeah, Steph will
what do I know?
The chat as well. Yeah.
I just live there. That's fine.
We'll always come to you first, Karen, on such matters. But yeah, anything else for you, Karen, on that, or anything else you want to mention before we go? Anything else you've been watching, keeping tabs on, to let the patrons know about?
No, other than New Japan Stardom, pretty much I am enjoying learning how to play Minecraft and play Animal Crossing and learning how to crochet and do some offline stuff like reading books. There's a lot to be said about reading books.
Good solid hobbies.
Yeah, thank you. I'm in my grandma arc right now.
I did manage to buy, finally, I always wanted it, just to say, the Nitro book, because it was on a half price sale from Amazon, which is normally ridiculous expensive, all like £38, but I wanted the actual physical copy, so I got it for like 22 quid. I went, that's good enough for me. So it's a beast of a book. I don't think I could leave it all for a summer holiday. It feels like it'd be like kind of like a bit of an intense read, but I'm looking forward to getting stuck into that physical version as well. But yeah, as just to repeat what you say, yeah, anytime I love sitting under the learning tree of Karen Peterson.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that.
Always, Karen. Always great to have you on. And yeah, unless there's anything else, JP, anything else to mention?
No.
Any news you've missed or anything like that? It's been a wide range of one this week. Covered all corners of the world. Usual plugs, I suppose. Like I say, Hollywood Rocket. I'm sure people are still working their way through that. That's up there. I've got the Big Match Gym Ultimate Warrior mixtape up on the Notion/Discord. JP will be dreading that. I'm sure. Sure, you big fan of Warriors in ring work back in the day, Karen.
You know me. So dialed in.
You work the Tokyo Dome. Apparently, we're going to find out how it went. Probably not.
We don't talk about my Joshi days. There's nothing to talk about. I swear.
There we go. But yeah, we got that coming up, JP, and all the other Patreon stuff.
Yeah, we got the weekend show coming up. We got two more after the Gym Warrior special. We've got two more Dealer's Choice coming up on there as well. So we've got those. So head off to patreon.com/grapple or the youtube.com/@grapple.
There we go. And it's not a grapple spotlight episode without a dog running there. I don't know where my cat is. She's hiding.
Say hi to everybody. Hi, everybody. Zelda sends all her kisses to all of the grapple folks out there.
Love it.
Well, last night Benji managed to put on the telly during it as well. And he managed to turn the volume up to like 90. It terrified me. I was sat in the room. It was just bang. I was like, what the fuck? So he hasn't done it though tonight. He's just asleep in the corner. He'll be badging me for a win in the next few
minutes. Don't jinx it.
I was on a Teams meeting today, and I was sat on the couch for it, but I was I had like a fake background on so that like it didn't look like I was on the couch. It looked like I was, taking it very seriously. And at my desk, Cat just walked behind me, like on the back of the couch. It broke kayfabe entirely. Everyone, is that your cat? I was like, yeah. What's she walking on? Just the shelf behind me. Yeah. It worked. Oh well. But anyway, there we go for more where that came from. Patreon.com/grapple, youtube.com/@grapple. Karen, where can the people find your stuff?
You can find my stuff over at postwrestling.com, especially all my thoughts on New Japan Stardom and just about everything else in between. That's pretty much it. Or, hey Karen Sensei, you can find me. But Please be kind. I'm tired. It's been a rough couple of weeks.
I do want to give a shout out as well to the show you do with the brilliant Bruce Lord as well. Whenever you're doing
Thank
the
you.
recaps, New Japan shows, are always fantastic. Yeah.
If you like what I said tonight about Stardom, there's plenty more in that one.
There you go. Get that over there. But yeah, of course, all our favourite people. You know, you're working with Bruce WH. We'll have to get him back on it at some point soon as well. But always a pleasure to have you on, Karen. So yeah, follow Karen at all those places. Follow us everywhere I said there. Yeah, we will be back next week for more fun. See you then.
Bye.
Good night, all.